And welcome to Live Pictures now. Action and beneath blue skies today as we head to Pau, and it's not often we can get to show you the early morning attack, although it's the early afternoon today. These 5 riders have just got clear of the peloton at the moment. Alexander Vinokourov, Pierrick Fedrigo, Dan Martin of Ireland, Dries Devenens and Nicky Sorensen are the escapers.
Yeah, the gap though, Phil, is only 15 seconds over the main field. The main field are not giving too many tickets of freedom out this afternoon, I think mainly because the teams of the sprinters want to have one final sprint before they make their way up to the Champs-Élysées, because for me this is the penultimate sprint stage.
Well, this is the hard part of it. Everybody wants to get away from the pack, of course, and they might just win the stage. But you've got to be so good, Paul, because for the first few minutes of making the escape, you've got to ride really as fast as if you were finishing the stage.
Certainly over the first hour of a race, very often you can see speeds approaching 30 miles an hour. It's an ideal profile today, as far as I'm concerned, for the sprinters. Yes, there are a number of climbs at the end, the two fourths and a third, the sprint point halfway through the race. But to me, those are not really difficult for the men who are used to sprinting into the finishing straight, and this is a great place to win a stage if you want to. The city of Pau is very famous when it comes to the Tour de France.
Well, there's 3 more riders on the way up to the 5 leaders. Soon we'll have 8 men. They'll assess who they are, and we'll see if that gap begins to open. But for now, I know you all can't wait to see who we've chosen to win today. Let's have a look at our Cadillac performance prediction action and the serious part of the day of racing. Just look at the length of the peloton. They have only ridden 14 miles of the stage today. We're seeing most of the stage live today, and that breakaway still showing on our computers at around about 15 seconds lead. That's all. They're not letting them go easy.
No, they certainly are. This is Dan Martin in the blue and white jersey of Garmin Sharper. He's seen this as an opportunity, but also rather interesting getting across there, one of the riders from Cadel Evans' teams, and that's Marcus Burkhardt.
Yep.
Obviously, he's looking for a bit of freedom this afternoon.
So Marcus Burkhardt, the man of the yellow shoes, in the breakaway. But look, before you write all these numbers down, I suggest you just rethink the whole situation. For some reason, they have clawed back the breakaway again as we go through 15 miles covered on today's stage of 158 kilometers today. So 83 miles still to go. Work as hard as you like, but the peloton just came back. We'll take a break. But I can tell you the organisation did fill out report forms for the local police, and they have asked the police to investigate officially who it was that put those tacks on the road yesterday.
It'll be a difficult one to solve though, Phil, because there were so many people at the side of the road, and there was so much excitement and mayhem going on that people probably didn't even notice what was going down.
No, that's the trouble. Anyway, what went down was mostly tyres, and in fact it was I think it built the reputation of Bradley Wiggins up to new heights in the Tour de France, because he virtually neutralised the race to allow everybody.
Well, he had been receiving a lot of criticism over the first week of this Tour de France about his non-respect of his adversaries, which I think is probably something that was bulled up fractionally by a lot of the journalists here at the Tour de France. But in fact, I think he earned a lot of respect yesterday from his adversaries and from the press too.
Well, is this the break that's going to run away? It doesn't look like it, does it? Looking at the front of the television of the pack here, because this is Orica Green Edge. You don't have a man in that move, and therefore I'm not going to let it go.
Well, just makes me think after we spoke with Andre Greipel this morning as to whether Orica Green Edge and Team Lotto Belisol will try and keep the main field together, because obviously they've got a great crack at getting a victory. And for the sprinters, obviously we go into the rest day tomorrow, and after that, Phil, it will not be a profile like this one. This is a very gentle profile. The sprinters will have to just ride around the next few stages in the Pyrenees, because for them it's up to Paris.
Well, looking down the beautiful town of Auch here now as the riders move on along the route, now known to be southern France's finest example of Gothic architecture. The Cathedral of Sainte-Marie was originally built in 1489. It's located in this town of Auch. It was restored in 1822. Among the features in the restoration are 18 Renaissance stained glass windows and a choir which contains 113 individually carved stalls. A task which took close to 50 years to accomplish. And there is Auch, and there is the cathedral, and the riders are on the outskirts of this town. I'm pretty sure that's the Canal du Midi down there as well, coursing through this beautiful part of France. Now it changes daily, doesn't it, as the race goes on. They're saying that little group has got about 25 seconds is now coming over on race radio for those riders up front.
We're just looking at the cathedral there, Phil. It was made a historic monument in France in 1906, but it was actually listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site on the road of the Ways of the St. James in France in 1998.
So the riders are in town now, being driven on by David Miller of Garmin Sharp, Arishiro of Europcar, Rui Costa of Movistar, Grifko of Astana, and Grabsch of Omega Pharma Quickstep. Welcome back. We're looking at the leaders now, just crossing the gap and showing how easy it is to reach these leads at the moment. We've had 4 riders. Igor Martinez has just come across. Alexander Vinokurov, Marco Mercato has also joined the leading group, and there's one more rider come across, and it is Trofimov of Russia, who has also reached the lead group. So they're the new amendments, giving us 9 riders now, but the gap is still only about 11 seconds. Well, they've got the added firepower, Paul. 4 more riders just come across. David Miller still driving on the front for Garmin Sharp and looking very, very good again today. But I wonder if those extra 4 riders will cause the peloton to desist.
I think it might have the opposite effect, Phil, because once it starts to get to be a big group of riders, the peloton will be concerned that they won't have the firepower to pull them back down towards the end, and that's why I think they'll close down this breakaway. It's hovering at 11 seconds the advantage of the now 9-man breakaway group.
But you can see by the speed of the peloton still fragmenting here under splits as they just want to go and go and go. In fact, Grifko is trying to tempt these boys away again, but they're coming. The whole peloton is right behind. Well, as we watch Grifko drive on twice now, we've seen this. We saw Boysenhagen of Team Sky try to slow it down. Now we're seeing Bernard Eisel of Team Sky saying, OK, nice applause, boys, now let's stop racing. A minute he did that, 4 riders left the peloton and reached the leaders. So they're getting a rough ride here, because what the big teams of the leaders want to do is get a breakaway away and then take the pressure off and not race so fast. At the moment, they have been racing flat out since the flag was dropped, and it's not over yet. So just panning around the scenery again here, Paul. This is the church here, Saint-Pierre.
Yeah, this is the Church of Saint-Pierre in the town of Ile-de-Noé. It dates back to the 13th century, but it was redesigned the following century.
Nice big bunch then, but still very preoccupied today. They don't want anything to go at all. Well, down below us here, as we pass the Church of Saint-Pierre, the peloton is under pressure. It's been under pressure since the flag was pulled in. David Miller has looked superb. He's been in a breakaway that frankly has gone nowhere for a long distance now. They have been working together. Miller's been driving. He looks like the man who won the other day. But the peloton are so attentive.
They are, I think, because of the fact, Phil, and I would say just looking at these images now, we're at the point where I can say Gruppo Compacto, the group is now all together again.
No, Les Miller in the blue helmet, tucked off to the left of our picture. And looking as though he really wants to get on with it now, and he's got himself a little bit of support too now. So as the riders now, they're changing places. Miller drops back as they continue going. That's Christian van der Velde, who's now replaced Miller at the front. As we look here at a lovely church steeple, and Paul is going to tell me what steeple is attached to the building at the bottom.
Yeah, it's the Church of Notre Dame de l'Assomption. In fact, it's 15th century, and it's got an incredible gate at the front, which has got a clock over the top of it.
And the crowd's enjoying the arrival of the leaders of the Tour de France.
And they've turned out, certainly turned out in their style here as we go through the small town of Massiac, which is located on the River Bouze, and this Royal Bastide actually dates back to 1298. You can see the half-timbered buildings over on the right-hand side, very typical of the medieval era.
Polite applause. You've got to hand it to them on the right there. All those green hands supporting the green jersey of Peter Sagan. Narrow streets, but beautifully cleared for the passage of the Tour de France. Well, the breakaway, Paul, it's not looking so good now, is it? They ran very quickly to over 6.5 minutes, and now it's come back inside.
Well, I have to admit, Phil, I had a feeling that Team Sky was not going to do any pacemaking, and I think all of a sudden they've just remembered they've got a world champion in their midst. Yes, they lead this bike race overall with Bradley Wiggins, but one of the most successful sprinters in Tour history, Mark Cavendish, is a member of that squad. And I think his teammate and his roommate at the Tour de France, Bernie Eisel, have all of a sudden said, right, I'm going to set the tempo and make sure we keep this gap at a reasonable amount, because if there's any chance at all of it being a sprint finish and they don't allow that gap to get up to 10 minutes, the sprinters teams will chase it down towards the end.
Well, there's a few little ripples that could prevent, I think will probably incite the pressure to go on at the front. They've arrived at the feeding zone though, those 6 leaders, 2 minutes ahead of the fastest expected time. So we've had a very fast day today as we run now towards Pau. There's the peloton at the front, 3rd and 4th man in line, the yellow jersey of Wiggins. It's becoming a routine day for the leader of the Tour de France, cruising serenely now towards Pau. Back with the leaders, these are the 6 men. They're running 2 minutes ahead of the fastest expected time of arrival at the moment, so it's been a quick race, but there's definitely a reversal now. They went out to 6.5 minutes. They've lost 45 seconds of that now. Sorensen sitting at the back as they continue to work together. Let me remind you that NBC Sports Network is your home for Olympic soccer, featuring the US women's quest for a 3rd consecutive Olympic gold medal. Coverage begins July 25th, leading up to just coming back from his Europcar. Europcar lost their first rider today in Vincent Jérôme, who's abandoned the Tour. Orica Greenedge have lost their first man in Brett Lancaster as well. Well, my computer is now saying 8 minutes 8 seconds, 8 minutes 9 seconds. I'll tell you right now, with the 3rd and the 4th category climb to come, I think the breakaway has suddenly become the winning breakaway of the day. I can't see the peloton pulling back this sort of a break today. There are 6 riders here. Now, can Christian van der Velde take courage from that big lead and maybe convert the win for Garmin Sharp? Let's hope. Marry me, Zsa Zsa. That's
One man must be thinking about his last stage victory in the Tour de France, and that, of course, Phil, is Peric Federigo, because the last time he won a stage in the Tour, 2010, it was right on this very finishing line in Pau.
Yes, and that's some incentive, isn't it, Paul, to do that, racing down to Pau, and it's the hottest day of the Tour so far. There we are, the Sky team on the front. Christian Knies is on the front, setting the pace as he always is at this stage of the race. The sprinters have decided they can't bridge a gap of now 9 minutes and 9 seconds to the leaders. We're having a runaway. Yesterday, the peloton were beaten by 18 minutes, but there were extraneous circumstances. But when the problem started, they were 15 minutes behind. And today, it is now 9 minutes on a flat stage. This is not a routine Tour de France this year.
Nope, and I don't think it will be a routine race into the Pyrenees the day after the rest day on Wednesday and Thursday. Those will be 2 immense stages in the mountains. For the moment, it looks quite magical. If the weather stays like this, it'll be a great racing. But as we've seen so often in the Tour de France and in the Pyrenees, the weather changes in the fraction of a minute.
Well, I can tell you there's going to be a lot of fans at the finishing line disappointed that Mark Cavendish is not disputing the sprint, because they brought their Isle of Man flags. They've had special jerseys designed with the rainbow stripes on, and they've had Superman embroidered on with the 3 legs of the Isle of Man flag, and they were hoping they were going to wave them over Mark Cavendish winning into Pau, because from this direction it is a sprinter's finish. But as we push out towards 10 minutes, there's no way they can close that gap now.
No, I think Cavendish now is going to have to think maybe Brive-la-Gaillarde, which is in itself a fairly tough ride up through the middle of France, and of course on the Champs-Élysées, because more often than not it's a bunch sprint on the Champs-Élysées on the final day of racing. David Miller sitting in the back here for Garmin Sharp, a winner of a stage just a couple of days ago. He was in the breakaway early on. He knew the break was going to succeed here this afternoon. He looked for it, and in fact he was the one who helped his teammate Christian Vande Velde get into that move.
No challenge for Bradley Wiggins. He's got his troops all around him. They're just keeping the pace ticking over. And we go through some beautiful open countryside here, lush countryside too. They've had some heavy rain in this region, but today it's absolutely beautiful. The next climb, the last climb of the day, is a 4th category climb. Now once they top this 4th category climb, it is only 29 kilometers to the end.
It's a long distance between them on the road, but these guys, as you know, Phil, they've got one thing in mind. That's just getting to the finish here this afternoon. Everybody raced very hard to get into that breakaway, and we had the opportunity today, which is quite rare for us, to see how long it takes for the breakaway to actually form, and how long it takes for it to get clear, and how long it takes for it to build up on its advantage. It's now done and dusted. It's 11 minutes and 26 seconds, and of the 6 riders, 2 of them have never won a stage in the Tour de France before, and they will be wondering how can they outwit the other guys with them. Dries Devenins is one of them in the pale blue jersey, and on the far side Christian Vande Velde, and I wonder if he's nurturing thoughts of outfoxing Thomas Voeckler today.
He's been around a long time, Christian Vande Velde. He's finished 4th in the Tour de France in a marvellous year a few years ago. He's broken just about most of his ribs, I think, in various crashes, and other bones have gone as well. He's been involved in the crashes early on. He lost a high chance of finishing in Paris in the opening week, as so many riders did. But he's found his way into a breakaway on the 16th day of the Tour de France. Can he convert it to a win? It will not be easy. The hardest race to win is when you're in a small group, because you really do have to be the strongest rider in the group.
Well, he's been an Olympian in 2 different disciplines, Phil. Definitely on the bicycle, but one was on the track, and that was way back in 1996 in Atlanta. That's how far back his career goes.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he rode the road race in the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing.
Atlanta, by the way, was the first Olympic Games to be declared open, so professionals became eligible for the Olympic Games for cycling as well.
And a certain Miguel Indurain got himself an Olympic gold medal in those Olympic Games in the individual time trial. The man who won the Tour de France no fewer than 5 times straight.
The winner of the road race, Pascal Simon, wasn't it, the Swiss rider?
It was a bit of a surprise attack down there towards the end, and Great Britain's Maximilien Chiandri, in fact, he got the bronze medal, and he was one of the riders, one of the guys who in fact helped develop Mark Cavendish, a rider, before he moved across a couple of years ago to BMC Racing to be an advisor there.
Yeah, and if he sounds Italian, it's because he spent all his life after the age of 6. He moved to Italy with his parents and was brought up in Italy. In fact, his Italian was far superior to his English, although once he started working with the English, it improved somewhat.
It certainly did, but in fact his dad left Italy and went to live in Los Angeles.
We go under the 15 kilometers to go now. As we look down on these 6 riders, we're still holding on 11.5 minutes, so the Tour de France today has taken a day off before the rest day, but these 6 boys, sooner or later, have got to make the decision to attack one another. I feel the first man to go will be the Belgian rider, Dries Devenins. I think once he starts them thinking of attacking, then they'll all start chasing. The rider at the back here will not go to the line with anybody. That's Thomas Voeckler. He is the lone attack expert, and he will have a go.
He most certainly will, but I think he'll wait till we get a bit closer to the finish. I saw him a little while back go back to the team car, and he was having a chat with his team manager. He wanted to see the complexity of the run-in over the last 8 kilometers, and it is rather complex, the approach into the finishing line in Pau, because there are a lot of traffic roundabouts that the riders have to get around. Of course, it's been fenced off so that they have to go around one side of the roundabout and they can't use both. And then 2 kilometers to go, there is a sharp right-hand bend which brings the riders into the boulevard of Alsace-Lorraine, which I wonder if that's a premonition, because in fact Thomas Voeckler was born in the Alsace-Lorraine region of France.
Well, he's gone to the front now as he dances on those pedals on a little rise on the highway here. Some of his French mates written on the road. Ladanu, who's in the Tour de France, and we've seen a little bit of him. Well, as they start to move up, the gap is well over 11 minutes, 11:29 and holding. Just a little bit of a rise here, perfect springboard attack, but nobody interested just yet.
look at their tally of victories. It's 26 victories for Peric Fedrigo and only 6 for Christian Vande Velde. He's really got to think hard of how he's going to force the sprint when we come down to the end. For me, when we get to about a kilometre to go, if they've got 10 or 15 seconds, Christian Vande Velde has to lock himself onto the wheel of Peric Fedrigo and hope he can come out of the slipstream.
Well, Paul and I know Christian's father, John, and John has just said that yesterday he was so depressed, Christian Vande Velde, he was actually crying in the peloton. What a difference a day makes.
Well, it certainly does. He's turned it around, and I'm sure the team manager had a very good chat with him to put his head back on here this afternoon. That team manager would have been a certain Alan Piper, who I've known for many, many years, and he knows how to motivate a rider. He knows how to give him a good kick up the rear end.
Move on. 2 riders in the lead as we get this a dual carriageway. We're on the right-hand side of it. It's perfectly straight until the built-up area of the centre of Pau. This is a beautiful city. We're coming here for the 65th time. It has been part of the culture of the Tour de France since 1903.
21 seconds is now the advantage. Thomas Voeckler there is still trying to get himself across. I have to feel a little bit sorry for Samy Dumoulin. His reputation went against him in this breakaway group here, Phil. They know how fast he is as a sprinter. That's why they've pretty much worked him over, as they say in cycling jargon.
Well, the bottle just got thrown away there by Fedrigo. He knows he's got a battle on his hands because Christian looks very, very cool every time he catches. Oh, look at that, Paul. The sprinter Dumoulin has been well and truly worked over at 2 kilometres to go now. And the spread eagle, it's not over yet, but only 2 kilometres left to ride now. This is Thomas Voeckler round the corner. They're getting away and they're going out of sight.
Well, they've still got to work as a team.
This is the right bend.
This is the right-hand sweeper now. They've got to collaborate, Phil, right the way down until the final kilometre or so, because 16, 15 seconds can get wiped away very quickly. There's neither of these riders are showing any sign of weakness, but I wonder if Fedrigo has got those slightly bigger calves than Christian Vande Velde. Vande Velde's got a very high-speed cadence when he ticks over those pedals. He's got to churn that at the end into sprinting speed.
Well, the only thing is that Fedrigo won. The only race he's won this year was the 3rd stage of the Criterium International in March. Christian Vande Velde hasn't won, but they're now under 1 kilometre to go. It's virtually a straight road. There is a kink in it going to the left. Then it's a straight to the finish. I can tell you there's a marvellous crowd in the centre of the Place Verdun to see the Tour de France come here. But it's going to be decided by 2 men now for sure.
Well, Thomas Voeckler now is going under the 1 kilometre banner, 15 seconds adrift. The winner will come from this leading group of 2. Vande Velde has to do this. He has to force the Frenchman to lead out the sprint and hope he's got the acceleration to come off his wheel in the last 200 metres.
Christian Vande Velde sits on the wheel. He will get to see the finish. I don't think he'll be coming round now. Fedrigo, he's got him in the front where he wants him. It's all about a sprint finish now. Fedrigo won here 2 years ago. He knows the finish in the Place Verdun, and he also knows, Paul, he's in the wrong position because Vande Velde will wait now to open the sprint.
Well, I noticed Vande Velde moved it up a gear there. He'd been using a very low gear up until this point, but he has to be in the right gear to have the jump and to have the power to come by Fedrigo. Fedrigo is waiting to make it a very short sprint.
The flags fly. Fedrigo looked over. He saw the kick by Christian Vande Velde, and he's giving his best job. Vande Velde's going to have to grit his teeth here because the gap is opening, and Fedrigo is going to win this stage of the Tour de France, and he's going to repeat what he did 2 years ago and win in Pau. Vande Velde second. Now it is Thomas Voeckler on the right here, taking on Nicky Sorensen. You see, Voeckler can sprint when he wants to, just pipping Voeckler. And Dries Devenants comes in 5th place.
Yeah, but the man who really lost out on the day was the sprinter in that 6-man group, because poor old Samy Dumoulin, they really worked him over in a professional style there, and he's going to have to settle for 6th place on the stage. Vande Velde, I think, a little bit undergeared there, Phil. He didn't have the power to come off the wheel of Peric Fedrigo, and as I've said, this man always knows how to rise to the big occasions. 2nd time he's won on this finishing line in Pau. Well done, that man.
Yes, absolutely. The face of Vande Velde to me looked like he was a winner all the way, but it wasn't to be. But hey, he's finished 2nd, and that's a terrific result for Garmin Sharp. Here comes the sprinter, and for all you young amateur riders watching cycling, now you know how to get rid of the sprinter when you can't sprint yourselves. It's awfully sad sight. Sam Dumoulin, he's a great little character. outwitted by the 5 men who made sure he wasn't in at the kill today.
Well, hopefully that second place today will turn around the morale of one Christian Vande Velde in second position. Yes, he did not have a great day yesterday, but today he's at the front end of the Tour de France, and he looked very, very easy throughout the whole of that breakaway. He just did not quite have the acceleration.
Christian Vande Velde, and a great result nonetheless. Second place on the stage of the Tour de France today here in Pau. There's the peloton around the big roundabout running towards the finish now. Now it's all about the sprint and the green jersey. He's tucked in nicely behind the yellow jersey. If he gets 7th place, which is the next available position, he gets 18 points for the green jersey. He doesn't need them, Paul, but he'll go for them. Well,
I'm pretty certain he will just keep ticking away at every possibility to put some more points into his green jersey points competition bag. And I have to say that Peter Sagan, I reckon yesterday, Phil, with that incredible move that he made on what is really a mountain stage, actually has given him the victory in this competition. But he will still keep showing off that green jersey all the way down towards the end.
The white jersey of the world champion, the first world champion on the road since Tom Simpson 50 years ago, and that is Mark Cavendish. 8 minutes and 53 seconds has ticked by since Pieter Fedrigo won the day. There'll be no change overall tonight, and the fact that Mark Cavendish is driving at the front means he's not interested in the sprint today.
I'm just looking to see where the green jersey is of Peter Sagan. He can't be too far away. There he is, just on the left-hand side, just pulling himself in, and more than 9 minutes.
Yeah, 9 minutes has ticked by. Sagan was on the right there, right down the bottom, but he's got his team around him now. He's preparing to sprint. As I say, he'll want anything he can grab here. We just keep to the inside right of this carriageway and use half of the road to keep the riders on course, as they'll shortly swing into the centre of Pau. You won't believe how much traffic uses this road on a normal day. Where it all goes when the Tour comes into town, I've absolutely no idea.
Well, I think they are very happy, Pau, when it comes down to the Tour de France. They, after Paris and Bordeaux, have received the Tour de France more than any other city. And they do put on a great show. This time it should have been a day for the sprinters, but unfortunately the breakaway got clear. Cadel Evans being very attentive, just over to the right-hand side. He's not going to sprint here this afternoon. All he's doing is riding at the front to keep himself out of danger. The same could be said for Bradley Wiggins in the yellow jersey.
Always dangerous moments in the sprint. Keep out of the way if you have to and if you can. The Argus Shimano team are the riders in white setting the pace. They've lost their sprinters. Marcel Kittel abandoned on stage 5. Tom Wieler's, who took over and was going well, he abandoned on stage 12. So I think they might be going to somebody like Mathieu Sprick or Jan Hugay at the moment. But we'll see. Maybe they're using it as training for their new sprinters.
That could very well be the situation, as down now they can just see it up the road there. There's the banner indicating 1 kilometre to go, and Argus Shimano are the riders in the white jerseys just over to the right-hand side. But they are Lotto Belisol starting to line this up for their man Andre Greipel, because after all, Phil, he is still in second place in that competition.
Well, remember that Andre Greipel, as they go under that kilometre banner, is 30 years of age today. It's good practice. His whole team has been told, leave me out for the sprint finish. It looks like he is still continuing the battle for the green jersey, just in case something happens to Sagan over the next week of the Tour. You never know. He might sag in the Pyrenees. He might get eliminated. You've got to keep racing for the points at the moment. Adam Hansen takes them around the bottom bend, and the last man to be launched will be Greipel.
Where Marcus Seeberg now is 3 from the end. Behind him it will be Greg Henderson. Henderson will be the last man to launch him. They are taking this sprint very, very seriously indeed, but locked on the Greipel's wheel is Peter Sagan.
Yes, look at that. Sagan is moving. Watch Greipel. He's second in line now. Sagan's got his wheel and beavering away on the back wheel. Greipel's looking for him. Well, don't get misjudged, boys, because the sprint has started. Now, just how good is Sagan in a flat sprint as they start? That's Tyler Farrar on Sagan's shoulder. Sagan is happy to cross the line third. Greipel, Farrar, Sagan over the line.
Well, the sprinters came out. It is important, as you said, Phil, to keep sprinting, to keep going for that competition. All of the top 10 in the overall standings are in this group, so there will be no change in the standings this afternoon.
No, he just lost 2 points to Greipel there. He won't worry about that. He gained, I think it was 9 points in the halfway sprint along the road. But, you know, I'm sure Tyler Farrar went for that today because he's on his way back into this race. He is a sprinter, knocked around. That was a good rehearsal for what might come. He's probably got 2 shots at winning the stage in the remaining few days of the Tour de France. So he did well there. Let's have a look at the stage results. There we are, as we saw it. Fedrigo, Van der Velde, Vauclair, Sorensen, Devenants, all in the breakaway, but all with time gaps, which we expected. Van der Velde in the same time, of course, finishing alongside Fedrigo, but sadly just behind his front wheel. So this is the 15th day of the Tour de France. Looking further down, the sprinter Dumoulin, a minute 8 behind at the end. He gave up when he was left behind. Greipel cleans up at 11 minutes 50. Tyler Farrar alongside him, Peter Sagan and Chris Bookmans of Vacances-Soleil practicing his sprinting there in 10th place. All 11:50, as all the peloton gets that time. There will be no problems in the overall. Welcome now to live pictures on the Route du Tour de France here. We are on the slopes of the Col d'Aubisque, the first big giant of the day, Paul. It was introduced to the Tour de France in 1910.
Yes, it's a race and a climb, Phil. The race route today, really a legendary race route, I'd have to say, with the Aubisque and, of course, the Tourmalet to follow.
Well, these are all the names. I'm not going to read them all out for you because there are, in fact, 38 of them in the breaking group. Which is a quarter of the field has gone clear, and none really affects the race lead at the moment. Igor Martinez, 18 minutes and 4 seconds behind, is the highest place. It's nice to see George Hincapie in here. Paulinho got the green jersey sprint earlier on. The break was already in progress. Our old friend Jens Voigt is here. The King of the Mountains leader here, Frederic Kessiakoff, that's a good move by him, and we've got 3 of the top 4 in that competition in the breakaway. So that's the tactics being played by some teams. In all, 17 of the 22 teams are represented in the breakaway, but none very close to the race leader.
Well, have a look at the profile and look away if you're fearful of the mountains. This is the first HC climb they're on of the day. That's the Col d'Aubisque. The next one a little bit further on after the valley is the Col de Tourmalet. The next two first category climbs are the Col d'Aspin and the Col de Peyresourde, which is the last climb of the day. And it's a rapid descent into the finishing town of Bagnères-de-Luchon.
And you can see the polka dot jersey there, the red spotted jersey of Frederic Kessiakoff. It's a good move to get in the breakaway. He'll be unlucky in some ways because he's got with him also here Chris Anker Sorensen and Thomas Vauclair. There's Thomas Vauclair right at the front now, and I think he's looking for the significant prize of the King of the Mountains now, and that's why he's joined this breakaway.
He certainly is, but Kessiakoff made a very good move to get himself into this breakaway. I have to say, Phil, there isn't a cloud in the sky here this afternoon. I think we're going to get some magnificent pictures over the next 2 days showing off the Pyrenees at their very, very best.
Well, the forecast for the next 2 days is hot and getting hotter. At the moment it's 82 degrees, but let's face it, here in France it's just coming up 1 o'clock. It'll go a little bit higher than that, especially in the valleys. Hardly any wind, sunny all night out, because our 2 representatives aren't in the breakaway yet, and Bob's is. He did choose when the breakaway had gone, which is within the regulations, as we're looking now at the beautiful slopes here, the Col d'Aubisque. You once raced up this, Paul, but you couldn't see where you were going, could you?
Well, I've raced over it many, many times, actually, and one time I raced on the descent on the other side going downhill, and you will see it is very, very dramatic indeed. And I did race down in the mist. In fact, I had to drop the bike going around one corner because I didn't think I was going to make it, and there are no safety nets.
No, there aren't, as Chris Horner found out right at the bottom when he went off a wall. Very strange crash that was. He must have touched the wheel or something. This is the peloton. There are riders off the back of the peloton as well as off the front. 38 men have got clear soon after the start today. They're built up in small groups until they amassed a total of 38 in the lead. Wiggins is only watching the men he knows must attack him today, and that's Cadel Evans, Jurgen van den Broek and indeed Nibali. They've got to attack him today. And they've got to gain time on him as well, because they've only got 2 days to do it now in these high mountains of the Pyrenees. But this is a beautiful race today. It's virtually the original route back in 1910. And we also go up later on the Col du Tourmalet as well. We'll take a break. Rejoin us on the Aubisque in just a moment. Back with about 400 metres from the top of the Col d'Aubisque here. This is an ore category. There's 25 points for the first man over the top. Kessiakoff is there in that polka dot jersey as the leader, and Thomas Vauclair is second wheel, being led out by his Japanese teammate Arashiro.
And third position is the polka dot jersey. And right behind him is Chris Anker Sorensen. This is going to be a massive sprint for 25 points, and I'm waiting to see Thomas Vauclair start the sprint, and there he goes.
Well, Vauclair looking for the location of Kessiakoff. Can Kessiakoff sprint as well? I don't think he can. He's just got a 5-point gain there over Kessiakoff, because it was 25 for the win and 20 for second. This is a battle now which is going to go across the Pyrenees today.
Well, Chris Anker Sorensen wasn't able to get in on the action there. In fact, he was tailed off a fraction. Kessiakoff just did not quite have the acceleration of Thomas Voeckler. Extremely motivated to try and move up in this classification, where his teammate Pierre Rolland is in second place.
Leaders of the peloton just hitting 1 kilometre to go.
And it's Bernie Eisel on the front doing the pacemaking for Team Sky. And I tell you what, he's doing a phenomenal job here this afternoon, Phil, because that 30-man group off the front of the race this afternoon, he's got them pegged. They have never gone further than 3 minutes and 51 seconds advantage.
Yes, they're climbing at the same speed all the way up the mountain. There have been a few riders drop from the peloton, but not a lot. The peloton has ridden very sensibly on this first big climb of 4 today. They don't want to use all the gas up in the tank on the first climb of the day, because the Tourmalet is the daddy of them all. Going down the other side now, watching Thomas Voeckler and Kessiakoff have just topped first and second. Freewheeling down, there'll be no rush to break away from the rest. They'll allow them to come back, because after this we go right down into the valley. We descend some 4,500 feet now, and then we start climbing again on the lower slopes of the Col du Tourmalet.
Well, Thomas Voeckler is a very, very good descender, and he's taking advantage of this early part. And this climb, in fact, is called the Col de Soulor, which is associated with the Col d'Aubis. And this is a very dangerous descent, and you'll get to see some magnificent backdrops in a few moments' time.
We will. Well, it's a magnificent mountain. Often people think that the Pyrenees are stark monsters of granite, but there's so much green on them this year. It's been raining here a lot.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Philippe Gilbert is the rider making a slight acceleration there, and the reason for that, I reckon, Phil, is to try and set something up a little bit later on for Cadel Evans.
Maybe on the way downhill. Cadel does race very quickly downhill. Maybe they'll test Wiggins on the downhill before they test him on the uphill.
Well, you know, if Cadel Evans wants to win the Tour de France, if Vincenzo Nibali wants to win the Tour de France, they need to get themselves over the next 2 days, Phil, at least, I reckon, 5 minutes over Bradley Wiggins, because if they go into the final time trial with only a 2-minute advantage over Wiggins, they will still lose the Tour de France, and they know that in the back of their minds. And to get big time, it's no good waiting till the last climb of the day. You've got to go a long way out.
Well, he's laying down the cards, maybe for Cadel to follow. The wind is indicating it's a tailwind at the moment. The Union flag flying proudly with the flag of St. George, which is the English flag. All for Bradley Wiggins at the moment, and the people are coming out into France more than ever before to watch the Tour from Great Britain. There's Philippe Gilbert looking very comfortable now.
Well, he certainly is. Bear in mind, Phil, that in that 38-man lead group, there's also another BMC racing rider, and that, of course, is the veteran, and I don't think he'll be too worried about me calling him the veteran, because this is his 17th Tour de France, the American George Hincapie.
The camping cars have been up here for 3 or 4 days now, getting these prime positions on top of the Col d'Aubis. There we are. He's being delivered all of the bottles here by Fred the Soigneur. Yeah,
that's Freddy Viana just there on the left-hand side. He's been a soigneur for many, many years. A Belgian, in fact, this is a bit strange, because he now seems all of a sudden to have sat up.
He sat up. He's come up for the bottles. Now he's going to go back and start distributing, I presume. Anyway, they're coming up towards the summit. 4 minutes has gone by as they come up towards the flag at the top. Michael Rogers, the man in black, behind the front rider here, which is Christian Knies. And as they come over the line, we'll just check the time for you. 4:22.
4:22 at the summit. We'll now start to begin with. The descent from the Aubis down to the Col de Soulor is a fairly gentle descent. Then once they get to the Soulor, they go down very, very steeply, and of course it is quite tricky and technical, and that's where, if there's any move going to be made, it'll be at that point.
This is Chris Anker Sorensen on the front at the moment, and Rui Costa. Look at the size, David and Goliath coming to the front there. Well, this is another journey around the farmyard, because there's plenty of herds of cows on the Col d'Aubis always at this time of the year, including ewes and horses as well. We're on the way down, Paul. Little hiccup on the way down of a slight rise, and then we keep going.
Yeah, the first part of the descent, as we see here, it's a sweeping descent, not very steep at all. And once you get over the part of this descent called the summit of the Col de Soulor, then we get down the very, very tricky descent down into the valley and heading down towards Luz-Saint-Sauveur for the next climb of the day, the Col de Tourmalet.
The side of the mountain is picking up a little bit of a wind at the moment. Well, it took the leaders 53 minutes and 41 seconds to climb up the Col du Haut-Bisque. 54 minutes 17 seconds it took the peloton, so they actually lost ground on the breakaway a little bit.
Well, only a slight difference in average speed, and if you look at the average wattage produced by the riders in the breakaway and the riders in the peloton, it was pretty much the same at around about 320 watts.
What a beautiful sight today in the Pyrenees. The beauty of the Pyrenees today, as the leaders are quarter of the peloton in the breakaway, some 38 riders up front by just over 4¼ minutes. The peloton disappearing into a tunnel on the Col du Haut-Bisque now. We are on the way down, a very fast descent, a slight rise over the Col du Soulor and continuing a long descent before they tackle the giant Col du Tourmalet. A real test day today, Paul, for Bradley Wiggins and the rest.
This is the final 2 days, I think, where they can challenge Bradley Wiggins. So far, Team Sky and Bradley Wiggins have done nothing wrong at all. The only sad thing for them is they've lost one man, and that was Konstantin Sivtsov, who crashed in the first week of the Tour de France and broke his femur.
Only 4 teams have all their riders left, as they now start their descent and continue onwards. We'll take a break, and as always we'll be taking early breaks so we can bring you the end of the race commercial free. The riders on the way off the Col du Haut-Bisque. We're watching the riders come down. This guy's going to catch, he's shouting here at our camera bike that will not get out of his way. And he got caught out there, Paul, but they're descending at such a fast speed right now because they're just coming, the peloton are going up the Soulor and those boys are on the way down.
Yeah, but I think once they start the descent, we won't see too much difference in the time, because these guys will go down at approximately the same speed, at about 60 miles an hour.
Well, let's just look how close he came to our camera car there, motorbike.
Il est là, il est là, il est là. Jeannot.
Yes, the actual moto rider saying he's here, and obviously the driver didn't hear him. Anyway, all is well. They're on the way down. The peloton here are on their way up. Bernard Eisel doing the pacemaking at the moment with Christian Knies, both of Team Sky. They're coming up towards the summit of what used to be a categorised second category climb here in the Pyrenees. No points today as they come up towards the top. 4:39, just gone up to 4:40 the gap. The peloton coming up to this little summit of the Col du Soulor. It's not counting today in the Tour de France, but nonetheless there's as good a crowd here as if it did, and the peloton all in charge under Team Sky at the moment, and the breakaway holding on to a reasonable lead and still going away as they continue their descent down to the valley.
But as I said, Phil, Team Sky don't need to panic at all, because none of those riders really in that leading group are very dangerous at all. Argelès-Argoste, as we can see on the distance, that popping up there is the Col du Tourmalet, but the riders have to get down into the valley before they attack that climb.
So we're on the way down. The leaders are at the limit of our yellow marker there, heading down to the feeding station, which takes us down to about 1,500 feet, and then we climb right back up to 7,000 feet. We'll take a break.
Valley approach road from Adas to Luz-Saint-Sauveur, and for me it's at Luz-Saint-Sauveur, Phil, that it really does start in earnest, the climb. But fortunately the riders have got a chance to go through the feeding station before they start the next outside categorised HC climb of the Tourmalet.
Plenty of riders willing to pacemake. George Hincapie in the red there, the American riding his 17th and record-breaking Tour de France. No other rider has started in 17 tours, and it looks like George is going to ride to Paris on Sunday as well. 5:05 race radio, 5:07 television is telling us. Who cares about 2 seconds in the Pyrenees, that's for sure.
Well, Bernie Eisel still riding his own personal individual time trial this afternoon, and imagine having a world champion as your domestique d'élite, and that is what Mark Cavendish is doing today, and he realises it's very important for Bradley Wiggins to get through these next 2 days. He even said in the rest day press conference yesterday, Phil, that he wasn't thinking about anything else in the Tour de France apart from helping Bradley Wiggins win the yellow jersey and try and win the final stage on the Champs-Élysées. Because if he wins a 4th time on the Champs-Élysées, that would be a record that would make him better than Eddy Merckx, because Eddy Merckx has won 3 times on the Champs.
And although Mark rarely talks about chasing records, he has said that that's the one he really wants, to become the first guy to win 4 times in Paris. There is Peter Sagan, the guy that we've come to know over this last 2.5 weeks. A cool operator. He's won that green jersey, barring accidents. He knows it too, so he was very happy when the breakaway today went clear. Nobody in the breakaway affected the destination of his green jersey. And the green jersey sprint was after only 16 miles today. For the record, Pouligno was first across the line, but he's not really counting in the competition. So all working out for him. He's being trailed there by Stuart O'Grady from the Orica Green Edge team. There's a nice close-up of the World Road Race champion, Mark Cavendish. I didn't see that there live, that was moments ago, but Peter Sagan enjoying his journey through the Pyrenees, where mostly the guys who wear the green jersey do not like mountains, because it's an award really for the sprinters. Now in the breakaway, these are the number of stages won by the riders in the breakaway. Fedrigo, his latest coming in pole the other day, has got 4-stage wins with the Kudov 4. Thomas Voigtla's had 1 this year, he's got 3 total. Sandy Cassar's come close but remains on 3 in history. Jens Voigt 2. Hincapie had 1, that was in the Pyrenees actually. Popovic 1, Dumoulin 1, that was at Nantes a few years ago. Bruce Feller, he won in Andorra some time ago now, and Bryce Felleux, and Sergio Paulinho, who is in the breakaway of course, and got the green jersey sprint earlier on. He got 1 win too. So that's the strength of the breakaway. It's very experienced, and of course it's got nobody in it who is required on the wanted posters by the leaders of the Tour de France. So it might go on for a while. Igor Martinez has now moved up into the top 12 with his lead in the break. The breakaway, 5:45, they're slowly nudging up. It's not an easy prizing open of this breakaway today. 5:45 is the advantage just now. There are 17 teams represented in the front group. That was Samuel Dumoulin, who just dropped off the front, doing a little bit of pacemaking. As he continues on, interesting man to see in the breakaway. Remember, he was in the breakaway into Pau, and they worked him over because he was a sprinter, and he finished last of the breakaway, quite a way behind. And the man that won into Pau in the white jersey, 3rd in line now, that is Pierrick Fedrigo. He got the win into Pau, and he's in the breakaway again. Well perched atop the French Pyrenean Mountains, this is it. The Pic du Midi Observatory had served as an astronomical and weather research outpost since 1878. Used by NASA in the 60s to research the surface of the moon in preparation for the Apollo missions. The observatory houses a number of telescopes, the longest of which is over 2 meters long. Today the observatory is open to the public and also used as a television transmitter. Well, at least we can prove that to you, can't we? There's the spin around. It stands out. You can see it all over the Pyrenees from wherever you are. It's the high spot. How on earth did they build that up there, one must always ask, especially in 1878. So we're spinning around the Pic du Midi, but when we come back we're going to be on the peak of the Col de Tourmalet. Well, we're going to see the riders going up it anyway. This is the peloton the climb as they've entered the town now of Luz-Saint-Sauveur. A lot of British flags there, Paul. They're going to wave madly as Bradley Wiggins goes through. We're now settling down to 12 miles to the top, and we're going to top out at 7,000 feet.
It's a brute of a climb, I would have to say, Phil, and I do believe that this, to me, is the most difficult side of the Col de Tourmalet. The other side comes up through the ski resort of La Mongie, but I've always felt this side was much more difficult. There's the sign indicating 19 kilometers to go to the summit as we go through this beautiful town, the spa and resort town of Luz-Saint-Sauveur.
So as we see the peloton now start to leave the town of Luz-Saint-Sauveur, it has just hit 90 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's shot up now, and it couldn't be hotter here in the valley. It might cool a little bit on the climb, but what they lose in temperature, they're going to gain in body heat on this climb.
Well, what I found yesterday, Phil, and I found rather strange, because in Africa where I live, it gets hot towards the middle of the afternoon and then gets cooler in the evening. Last night, the hottest part of the day was 6 o'clock at night.
Yes, the weather's balmy, isn't it, just now? 5:28, that's the lead they take on to the Col de Tourmalet. They topped over the Col d'Aubisque with 4 minutes 22, so they've added a minute since they climbed the Aubisque.
Yeah, but over the last 20 kilometres, it's been pretty much locked in at that 5.5 minute step, and that's all because of the pacemaking of Bernie Eisel on the front, with a fair amount of assistance coming from Christian Knies. But these guys now will start to hit some slightly different gradients. The early parts of the Col de Tourmalet are only about 5.5 to 6.5% the average gradient. But as you start to get to the summit and start to climb out of the tree line, you start to get to gradients are much steeper at 9% average.
There she blows straight ahead of the riders now as we go through this most beautiful valley. Rich lushness because of the rain the region's had this summer. It's all gone away now. Beautiful clear skies over the Tour de France as they make their way across the river, which is the what is the name of the river?
The River Luz.
The Luz, yeah.
The River Luz. In fact, that's where the spa and resort area of Luz-Saint-Sauveur gets its name from. It was exploited as a spa area, Phil, between the 16th and 19th century. Little move acceleration here by Danilo Hondo. It's not really an attack, this, Phil. This is just him raising his pace as he gets to the start of the climb to get himself a bit of a lead, because he's not one of the great climbers of the Tour. This is the smoother gradient at 6.2%.
Yes, well, he's lifted the ante. I'm not sure that was a good move by a man who's renowned as a sprinter, but there's a reaction coming from the field as well. It's a long way up this now. Maybe he just wants to set the pace for a moment.
Well, I think he just wants to set the pace for himself rather than have the pace dictated to him by the other riders in the group. But somebody's trying to come across the gap.
Yes, and one I think is Igor Martinez with the most to gain in this breakaway, 18 minutes behind overnight, and Roy Acosta 19 minutes behind. They're the two big men in the group if the gap continues to grow.
Danilo Hondo, not too many responsibilities for him now on board the Lampre ISD squad, with the retirement, or the elimination, should I say, of Alessandro Patacchi. Patacchi so much wanted to finish the race that, in fact, on the race down to Bellegarde, he crashed on the descent of one of the climbs, finished the stage outside the elimination time, went to hospital afterwards, and they found out that he'd broken a couple of ribs. This is Samy Dumoulin disappearing off the back of the 38-man group, so we're now down to 37.
That's the first one to be dropped here. He's the first one to leave. They went up the Aubisque all together. Nobody was left. Now Samuel Dumoulin looks as though he knows the Col de Tourmalet. He's been in the Tour de France and over this climb before, so he knows what he's in for, and clearly he doesn't like what's coming.
No, certainly he will have a hard time going up here, Phil. He's an hour and 54 minutes behind in the overall standings.
Thomas Voeckler here sat at the back, at the wrong end of the line. He won the climb over the Col d'Aubisque, and the King of the Mountains leader is much further up this line. The pressure has suddenly been lifted in the breakaway, and on the left there now, the man who's doing the pacemaking and trying to break this race up is Dan Martin of Garmin Sharp. Just reminded the tweet he did earlier. This is John Voice, team manager, said this. Dan Martin in the break, that's your stage winner. I should have listened to him for the Cadillac selection, shouldn't I? But he certainly looks as though he's up for it today, Dan Martin. This is the day he's chosen. And what a day to choose to win a stage of the Tour de France today. Well, while these boys are under pressure, Dan Martin has been joined in the lead by Frederick Kessiakoff. He wants the mountain points. Dan Martin wants the stage win. While they get on with their job, let's go and wake the boys up on the primetime show and see what's on the show tonight. Let's go to Liam King. A big interest in this because Dan Martin has predicted he would attack today, and Jonathan Vaughters is saying he'll win the day. We'll find out. Serious pacemaking being done, and it looks as though Laurens ten Dam is quite prepared to help them here. Even though he's the best placed overall, he could make a little bit of ground up.
Well, it was all started, the flurry of activity started by the man actually in second position in the blue helmet there, Dan Martin, just 25 years of age, and he actually rode a route almost similar to this, Phil, back in 2008 when he went on to win the Route du Sud, and that was the first indication we got that he was going to be a great bike rider.
Well, this is the damage being done to the breakaway as on the motorbike squeezed through the fractured line there of riders. Still up front is Danilo Hondo.
Well, Thomas Voeckler has also been put under a pressure here. He was hoping to use this next climb of the day, the Col de Tourmalet, to try and get himself a few more points in the King of the Mountains classification. But if Kessiakoff can stay with that leading group and get himself big points on today's big climb, he could seriously be laying down the foundations to win that competition.
And the 63 just passing through our picture there, Tyler Farrar now going backwards to join Mark Cavendish and the other sprinters who are slowly being ridden off the back of the peloton on the climb. They're on the lower slopes. The gap is still, it's just under 6 minutes, the gap. With one computer saying 5:55, but our screen is saying 6 minutes 15 at the moment, the leader to the peloton.
Well, Phil, these guys from Team Sky don't have to do anything more than just control the breakaways' advantage. They don't need to pull them back into the fold at all. And at the moment, I think the race is playing into their hands. If they want to put Team Sky under difficulty, it's up to the other teams to come forward and do the pacemaking.
Looks like this is the first selection on the climb because Thomas Voeckler is coming up now with a small raiding party to join those three riders up front. So they're going to fragment this breakaway once and for all, I think.
Well, like the slightly older riders, they have a hard time when they hit the foot of a climb very hard, but then once they get into the rhythm, they are capable to recover. And the rider recovering with him there as well was George Hincapie, one of the oldest men in the race at 39 years of age.
Well, George Hincapie, a one-time stage winner in the Tour de France. It was in the Pyrenees where he won. Now look at this, the ice is down, the backs of the necks fall over the road now, Paul. The leaders are splitting up. Chris Anker Sorensen looks as though he's a little bit under pressure there. He can't hold the pace being dictated by Thomas Voeckler. We've got three riders joining now, the front runners, instead of four.
Well, Bryce Feliu is a rider just on the back wearing number 94. He's had glory in the Pyrenees as well, but it wasn't in France. In fact, it was in Andorra, the Principality of Andorra, at the other end of the Pyrenean chain near the town of Perpignan. So this is important now because we're looking here, Phil, at the three riders in the top four in the King of the Mountains competition trying to get themselves back into this group.
Really giving his best shot. That he's trying to keep the pace on just long enough to break the spirit of the riders behind, and then he'll probably settle down a little bit. It's done the damage to Chris Anker Sorensen. He's now looks as though he's really struggling here, but he's going to give it another shot to get on.
Well, it really is a difficult climber. We're coming to the steeper gradient now, 8 and 9% the average. Thomas Voeckler doing a sterling job. I thought he was going to get blown away early on when I saw him sitting at the back of that big group of riders, but he's riding on courage, Voeckler, here this afternoon, Phil. He wants to try and get himself the King of the Mountains competition. We're at about 8.6% this gradient, and it's quite nasty, but it is, for me, the steepest part of the climb is right up at the top, the last 2 or 3 kilometers, when we get out of the tree line and we get into the rocky zone at the top, and there it's around about 9%.
They still have 12 miles to climb up this mountain at the moment, a little bit less than that. 76 kilometers is the top, and we're at 88 to go at the moment. 12 kilometers rather, 7 miles are still to climb up this mountain. And Dan Martin now really is dancing on those pedals. The open mouth of Laurens ten Dam, the grimace of the green jersey of Thomas Voeckler. These riders racing to top the Col de Tourmalet first, while in the peloton Bradley Wiggins has everything under control here. Look at the head of the peloton here, and that's Ivan Basso tightening his shoes there. As we see to the left, we go up towards the summit. There is bad news for Garmin Sharp now, because Dan Martin has been dropped by the three leaders, so there's now just Voeckler and Feliu setting the pace. Well, we're looking at the peloton. It's getting smaller by the second on as we get to within the last 3 miles of the climb of the Col de Tourmalet. Dan Martin unhitched by the two Frenchmen at the front. Feliu and Voeckler going ahead on their own.
191 sitting at the back of the group, Levi Leipheimer. He's been in the wars as well. You can see the bandage on his right shoulder there as he just pushes number 122 out of the way, Chris Boekemans. group is not very big, Phil. It's getting reduced very rapidly now. And just looking over on the left-hand side, still in contact, Peter Sagan.
Amazing guy. These are the two leaders now, and Vauclair in and out of the saddle. He'll keep Bryce Feydeau with him because Feydeau's a very good climber. These two Frenchmen going away on this climb. More points in the bag for the King of the Mountains. He could be heading for the polka dot jersey today or tomorrow.
I've got to say that Thomas Vauclair probably wins the award for the Ministry of Funny Faces. He's pulled his face into so many contorted positions there because of the pain that he's going through.
King of the Mountains group is now back 44 seconds, and I think they'll be picking up Dan Martin. The peloton at 8:06, so this is the most strange Tour de France. All of the leaders resigning to an infight in the back groups.
Well, Vauclair looks over the thing about these big mountains, especially when the weather is clear, you can look down the mountain to judge the difference between yourself and the guys who are chasing you. Now, if Dan Martin gets picked up, that will leave the third place available for the man who leads the King of the Mountains competition, Frederic Kessikov, and there are 16 points available. Over the top of this climb it goes 25 points, 20, 16, 14. And Frederic Kessikov, I'm pretty sure, Phil, will have done the math.
You bet your life. Slowly but surely, what is left of the peloton of the Tour de France. It was 155 strong at the start of the day. Today in Pau, there it is. I suspect maybe 30, 35 riders left. The spread across is 8 minutes 12 seconds from the peloton to the two riders up front.
Yeah, and in fact it continues to be stretched out. Thomas Vauclair is not a great climber. He's not reputed as a great climber, but in the last couple of years he really has excelled himself in the mountains. He's not scared at all about blowing up on a situation like this because he's a long way down in the overall standings. For him, it's all about trying to win one of the inside competitions at the Tour, and that of course is the King of the Mountains.
Well, he's led the King of the Mountains on 3 occasions, including during his brief journey here for 1 day. He held it for 5 days, the leader's jersey, in 2008 and a day in 2005. But now he's trying to win the King of the Mountains, and that's why he's out on the attack today. Not there yet. This is Laurens ten Dam with the current leader, the King of the Mountains, in third, which is Frederic Kessikov, and Chris Anker Sorensen always looks under pressure, but he sits in 4th place overall. Kessikov leads, Vauclair is second, and Pierre Rolland, who's not up here today, he sits third. So today we will get 25 points for the first rider over the top, 20, 16, 14, etc. As you can see here, Boysenhagen picking up the team bottles. He's done a marvellous piece of pacemaking. Now he's gone back to get the drinks.
Yeah, and Michael Shah was the rider from BMC wearing number 8 for Ray. Will be doing the same thing, of course, for Cadel Evans and his team, hoping that his team leader will be able to do something a little bit later on. It's a long time, Phil, since we've seen Bryce Feydeau race like this, but his only success in the Tour de France actually came in the Pyrenees on the road up to the ski resort of Arcalis in the Principality of Andorra.
Look at the face now of Tommy Vauclair here. He's got the gap, and he's looking up there straight at the summit of the Tourmalet, but he's still 2.5 miles ahead of him. It doesn't look so far because of the way we zigzag up the contours of the mountain. These are the chasers, and we'll take a break.
Lots of discussions about whether or not Chris Froome will commit treason and try and beat Bradley Wiggins, and he himself has said no. We made a decision because of the time trialling in the Tour de France this year and the amount of time trialling that there was, that I would work for Bradley Wiggins in the Tour de France this year. Turn it around maybe in a year's time when we might have a different route at the Tour, and then Bradley Wiggins will work for me.
Well, there's the face the man I feel must attack at some stage today. Vincenzo Nibali and Jurgen van den Broek as well. So as we just pan down here, let's not forget, sadly, that we've lost sight now of Dan Martin. He's been dropped by the two French riders up front, but nonetheless, we'll check in with the car camp in Garmin-Sharp.
Come on, Dan, it's 20 seconds. You got to get this back before the top. Come on, Dan, come on. Everything's gone behind you. Come on, Dan, come on. 1 more K, 1K more. Come on, Dan.
Well, that's where he is. He's coming up to the last kilometre. We don't have a camera there at the moment because there's so many riders spread over the side of the Col de Tourmalet. But Jonathan Vaughters is saying he's got to get back up. Well, we're at 1 kilometre for the two leaders now as they head up to the summit. I don't think Bryce Feydeau will try and attack Tommy Voigtler here. 1 kilometre to go.
That there are only 14 points available for Kesyakov if he wins the sprint.
Well, this is the group now being picked up. I'm pretty sure Dan Martin is still ahead of this group, but we've got no cameras left to prove that. But we'll see at the top of the climb. But he hasn't been caught, I don't think, by the Kesyakov group, which is not good news for Kesyakov because he'll lose the third place points as well. They're not far from the summit now. It gets a little bit narrow towards the top of the climb, the Col de Tourmalet. The adrenaline coursing through those bones now with the shouts of the public. You know the summit is literally just around the corner.
I have to say, Phil, it was pretty good back there to hear the vuvuzela going as well, especially on the 94th birthday of the former president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela.
Absolutely. And I expect he's watching this on Supersport television in South Africa as we speak. But looking here now, as they continue the climb up the Col de Tourmalet. This is the group which is split up. George Hincapie is the man in red just in front of Alexander Vinokourov. What a fighter Vinokourov is.
Yeah, he won't give up. He does not want to ride his final Tour de France, Phil, in anonymity. And I have to say, over the last couple of days, he has not been anonymous at all.
No, he's ridden a great Tour de France. Dries Stevenens was there down the back of the pack as well. But this now is still Tommy Voigtler pushing on to try and pull on the polka dot jersey tonight. They're not far away from the summit now. It gets narrow just as they pass over through the gate. It's just around the corner there now, and that's the final kick by Tommy Voigtler. I don't think Bryce Ferrier will be interested in taking the points away. There's a 5-point difference in the quest for the King of the Mountains. At the top, 25 plays 20. Tommy Voigtler just checking to make sure, and then he does his zip up, and over the top he goes. So he's got the first 2 climbs of the day. He's picked up 50 King of the Mountains points.
Well, we'll get a chance over the top here, Phil, just to see how far behind Dan Martin actually is and whether or not Kesyakov can get himself 4th place. It's going to be very important for the man in the polka dot jersey here to get maximum points from this group.
It certainly will, because there's still 2 first category climbs to come, and there's every reason to suspect that Voigtler is going to be out front for at least the first one, which is the Col d'Aspin, because once you descend this climb, you just literally cross the road and start the next one.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Just sitting on the back there, George Hincapie. He's no stranger either to breakaways in the big mountains. And the oldest man in the race has also recovered there, Jens Voigt, wearing number 18. What a star.
He's unbelievable, nearly 41 years of age, and he's climbing the Tourmalet with these riders. Number 18, look at him all over his bike. The strength out of that man's body is incredible.
Well, it's Chris Anker Sorensen who's taken up the pace-making there, trying to get himself the next points on the day. But I think Kesyakov may well just respond to this. He's in the white jersey with the red spots on it.
Colombian flag flying on the right. No Colombian riders in the race this year, but nonetheless the supporters are here.
Kesyakov moving up round the outside, coming up alongside Laurens ten Dam. It's going to be a big acceleration, but he needs to make the move fairly shortly, Phil, because otherwise he won't be able to accelerate. There he goes.
Yes, it gets very narrow just on the top, so he's gone over, and we're still not convinced, but we think he was 4th place because we're pretty sure Dan Martin has gone over already. We have no cameras up there.
Well, we're going to have to wait for the official results to come through on the computer this afternoon. The race is split up so much, the motorbikes are dispersed all over the slopes of this mountain. Now the descent, and it is a rip-roaring descent, I can tell you from experience, Phil, because I've been down this descent at speeds approaching 100 kilometers an hour or 65 miles an hour.
There are some tight bends, but largely they are long, straight, flat-out, full-bore descents for these riders, and there's every reason for the 2 leaders to push on now, heading for the Col d'Aspin. They'll streak through the village of La Mongie and keep on going down to the valley below. These are the 2 leaders. And this is Marcus Burkhardt being dropped. So as they continue the long descent, the Norwegian flags are decorating the mountains of the Pyrenees. And the Norwegian in 2nd place, Edvard Boysenhagen. As we see the German Christian Knies on the front. We've just caught Ladagnou there from the leading front runners. Well, the location of Dan Martin remains a mystery at the moment. He hasn't been given his third over the mountain, but then we haven't got the follow-up to anybody behind Voigtler and Feylieu at the moment. So we'll work it all out as time goes on. There's the village of La Mongie, and Tommy Voigtler saying, come on, let's work together, even though we're going downhill. Let's race for the bottom. Well, the peloton is still on the way up, and we will be there when they cross the summit of the Col de Tourmalet. Not far from the summit. Well, just looking down at the moment, gradually Feylieu is trying to catch up with Thomas Voigtler, who is making a daredevil descent here. George Hincapie crashed soon after the descent started. He's got a nasty rip in his jersey on his left shoulder, which looks as though it's covered in blood, and he's rejoined the group he was with on the descent. So at least Paul George hasn't lost his nerve on the way down.
No, I think he's a great descender, very experienced, and we'll find out later on tonight how that accident happened, but they can happen any time on one of these descents, and that's why you have to make the descent yourself, and I think we will see Team Sky being in control of the descenters. Now, all of a sudden, Bryce Feylieu in second position there, wearing number 94. He's managed to catch the daredevil descender, Thomas Voigtler. I know this descent very, very well, Phil, and you can approach 70 miles an hour on a descent like this.
So we're looking down now at the yellow jersey coming up towards the summit. Another mountain to be ticked off by Bradley Wiggins, and the guys around him have not raised a pedal in anger. He's still surrounded by 5 of his teammates. He's come over the 2 high climbs of the day with 2 lower ones, although equally difficult, I think, 2 first category climbs, and he's never been challenged.
No, I have a feeling they're going to wait till the very, very end, the final climb of the day, because if they can get a minute or so on the climb of the Col de Peyresourde, Vincenzo Nibali or Cadel Evans will be able to keep the majority of that on the descent into Bagnères de Luchon, but they do certainly need to take the race at some time and try and put Team Sky into difficulty.
Well, there's the peloton and what's left of it, and it's still reasonably big to come up. This is Bryce Feylieu, is it? No, listen, that's further back down at the back of the bunch at the moment. As the gap comes up, 10 minutes 1 is still counting to the summit for the peloton, led by Christian Knies and Edvard Boysenhagen. It's the crossing of the Col de Tourmalet, and Bradley Wiggins marches on towards Luchon. Well, the Wiggins bunch of about 40 riders goes over exactly 10 minutes behind Thomas Voigtler, who freewheeled away at high speed from Bryce Feylieu. But right now, Feylieu's got back up to Voigtler as they now continue their descent to ground level. Well, not quite, but a long way away from the height of the Tourmalet.
Well, you said about Bradley Wiggins continue his march on to Bagnères de Luchon. Well, to get there, he's still got to go over 2 big climbs of the day. The next one, which will be the Col d'Aspin, a very famous climb. It's 12.5 kilometers long. And again, actually, I have to say, I think this is the easier side. We went over the harder side of the Col de Tourmalet. We do go over the easier side of the Col d'Aspin, and then we go over the Col de Peyresourde, the final climb of the day, which is pretty steep when it comes up to the top.
Yes, it's slightly shallower climbing this side of the Col d'Aspin, and so they have but the descent is quite dangerous on the Col d'Aspin.
No, it is very tricky, especially the side that they're coming down here. The yellow jersey riding at the front end of this line of riders. He always picks to ride behind 2 or 3 of his teammates, in front of Richie Porte and, of course, in front of Chris Froome, who lies in second place overall.
So the peloton snaking its way down the mountains now, as riders who were dropped in the last 400 meters of the climb, they'll try and get back onto the back of the peloton. There'll be no risks down here. This will be a routine descent for Team Sky. They won't try to save any time whatsoever. It's up to the others to do the attacking, not Bradley Wiggins' team. So it's quite likely the time gap will continue to rise here, even though we're going downhill.
Yes, I wouldn't be surprised, because the Team Sky will not want to take any risks, because they realise that the Tour de France can be lost on a descent, especially if you get involved in a crash. And we've already seen the American rider George Hincapie. We didn't actually see it, but we saw the results of his crash as we look at the rider sitting on the back there, Andreas Kloden of Team Radio Shack.
Long, fast descent. They'll be freewheeling at around about 50 miles an hour right now. So as the peloton, Bradley Wiggins, hand in the back pocket there in yellow, he's taking time out to have some food. We'll take time out to have a commercial break. Rejoin us. So George Hincapie looking a little bit right raw meat on his left shoulder there. He's waiting, I still think, for the doctor's car to come alongside him, but he's got back up to the sizable chase group, which is still behind those two French leaders.
Yep. Well, we've still got a race situation with the two leaders, Vauquelin and Felu, leading Dan Martin by 1 minute and 10 seconds and almost 2 minutes back to the group of George Hincapie, while the main field, they're a long way behind.
There's the medical motorbike just coming up now, so it'll go straight through to George Hincapie. The peloton just making what we'll call a sensible, normal descent of the Col de Tourmalet. Nobody pushing the pace at all. These two leaders will profit by that. They've added about a quarter of a minute since the top of the mountain. They have just started the Col d'Aspin, which takes them back up to 1,400 metres. They were at 2,115 on the Tourmalet. And once over the top of the Aspin, they will be just 29 miles from the finish.
That's about 5,000 feet in climbing, but now we're just getting race radio telling us that Dan Martin is currently only 38 seconds behind these riders. He may well recover and get himself back into the leading group on the Col d'Aspin.
Well, I know he's Bellew on the front. Thomas Vauquelin setting his jaw again, licking his lips. Can't wait to get over the top of the Col d'Aspin. There's 10 points for the winner of the Col d'Aspin. Then he's going to be very, very close to taking the jersey.
Yeah, 10 points for the first place rider, 8, 6, 4 and 2, and I could be very certain that Frederic Kessiakoff will be hoping that he can get himself 4th place again. He's got to get that if he wants to have any chance of retaining his lead in the King of the Mountains tonight. He's got to make sure he keeps chipping away, and he's still got to come out and defend it tomorrow.
Still the peloton under the control of Sky, guiding Bradley Wiggins safely through the Pyrenees. The two big all-category climbs now behind the race. There are 2 first-category climbs to come, and then there will be a much more serious descent into Luchon, because it's downhill all the way from the top of the Col de Persaud.
Yeah, I think we may well see an early move come on the Col d'Aspin from somebody like Jürgen van den Broek, but I would expect the move from Vincenzo Nibali to come on the Persaud.
Okay. This is Bryce Felu here, raced into Andorra in 2009 as a stage winner. First time he really called his name. All the teams wanted him at that time. There he is, coming up to the dizzy heights at Arcolis in Andorra. And he got the stage win. So a big moment there for he's never won a stage in the Tour since, but he's now, in fact, he's never ridden the Tour de France since this year when he won. So now he's back in the race. These are the two leaders, Thomas Vauquelin on the right and Bryce Felu there, now on a different team and already 2 hours and 10 minutes behind Bradley Wiggins. And this is George Hincapie. It now looks as though the medical men are doing the next level now. He's done his elbow, he's now working on his knee, he's done his shoulder. It's incredible, isn't it, how they can do this on the lower slopes of the Col d'Aspin. So these are the leaders, but they're chasing the 2 men out front. They were originally in the first big breakaway. These are the 2 leaders.
Only won 4 races as a professional, and they were all in his first year as a professional back in 2009. Again at the back end of the field as it accelerates towards the summit of the climb, Stuart O'Grady in a little bit of bother.
So our pictures in a little bit above at the moment, but they're sorting themselves out. This is under the pressure now being applied by Team Liquigas here. Boysenhagen also cracking. So see this with the 2 leaders approaching the summit of the Col d'Aspin, but there is a definite move afoot back in that Wiggins group now as Liquigas Cannondale have started to apply the pressure. These 2 though are going to the summit. He's going to cool off here, also cutting his way through because he's coming back up behind Jens Voigt and also
Chris Ankersson.
Thank you. Over the summit, 10 points for Vauquelin. He's now closing right in on the leader of the King of the Mountains, Kessiakoff.
He only needs 6 more points in that competition, and there are 10 points available over the summit of the next climb of the day, and then he will be the new leader of the King of the Mountains competition tonight. Vinokourov was put into difficulty on the early slopes of the Aspin. Now he has recovered to join these 2 chasers.
This is the race for 3rd place up the mountain now. The pressure's gone on by his own team, and it dispatched Peter Sagan here.
Well, I'm amazed and surprised that this guy has lasted so far here this afternoon, and he is going to be a rider whose development we will follow over the next 10 years or so. Christian van der Velde, second in the stage in Po. He's being tailed off just towards the summit of this climb as well.
And Peter Velits also being dropped there as we return to the front now. The race for third. Well, look at that. Vinokurov snicked Chris Anker Sorensen, who's much higher up in the King of the Mountains overall than Alexander, but he's gone over the top, and it's a good minute still to catch up on the descent.
Well, Vinokurov did that, Phil, because it's his own teammate who actually leads the competition, Frederick Kessiakoff, and he wanted to take a few points away from Chris Anker Sorensen, because you never know, after a bad day in the mountains, you can always come back and he can try an assault on that competition tomorrow.
Yep. 10:17 still the spread, the clock running on the summit now. As it's a couple of minutes since the leaders went over. That acceleration by Liquigas has clearly reduced that peloton Wiggins right now. We're seeing also Marcus Bergharter being dispatched off the back, and David Malacane, the Italian member of Europcar, been dropped.
Well, we're getting to the nitty-gritty part of this race here this afternoon. We've seen all of a sudden Liquigas are starting to toughen up the pace. It's to set something up for their man Vincenzo Nibali. And I think, as I said, Phil, I don't think it's to make the move on this climb. It's to start to toughen the race up a little bit for the next climb of the day, which is where Nibali, I reckon, would like to launch his first move.
Well, there he is, looking straight at the camera here, riding behind his teammate Ivan Basso. Michael Rogers, the teammate of Wiggins, has moved on to the back wheel of Vincenzo Nibali. I see the blacker jersey of Lotto moving their man up, Jürgen van den Broek. So it looks as though the pre-race favourites are beginning to waken up.
Well, this is Dominic Nerz, the rider from Liquigas, dropping off the back there, getting reduced in numbers. Their aim, Liquigas Cannondale, is to try and isolate Bradley Wiggins, but for the moment they are isolating themselves. Slipping back here, Jérôme Coppel, not quite having the Tour de France that he had last year, but he's still trying to stay in contact with the leaders.
Well, he's been up there until the final elimination as we come up towards the summit of the Col d'Aspin. Remember, the first 5 riders are on the way down at the moment, heading into the valley before the final ascent of the last mountain of the day, the Col de Perrosaude. There's confirmation of the climb. Voigtla gets 10 points, no points at all for Kessiakoff. Feliu 8, Vinokurov, Sorensen and Voigt top 5. Overall now, there it is, 6 points behind Tom Voigtla is now. The next one has 10 points for the winner. So Kessiakoff looks as though he may be waving goodbye to his polka dot jersey. One more climb still to come as we join the chase group on the way down, still trying to bridge a gap of around about a minute, led down by Jens Voigt, Chris Anker Sorensen, Alexander Vinokurov. This is a fast daredevil descent now down the Col d'Aspin. There are a few very, very sharp bends on the way down this mountain. We're heading towards Luchon, and there is a plan afoot in the peloton. We'll take a break. And with 30 miles left to ride, we're still climbing the Col d'Aspin into its last kilometre. The reigning Tour champion Cadel Evans has cracked. He suddenly sagged off the breakaway group as Liquigas Cannondale applied the pressure. And not only that, but the group that he went off the back with is now leaving him behind. The rider just up the road on the right, Amael Moignard, the Frenchman on his team, is now trying to slow down to look after him because he cannot answer the pace of his own teammate just now. So this is really a sad sight here. Cadel Evans now is in danger of losing his high overall position. Moignard's picked him up, but up front now is the pace-making of Ivan Basso that's caused all the crisis in the back of the peloton. And Wiggins has moved right up to look after himself now with his rival Nibali just in front of him.
Well, I think more than anything else, Phil, he just wants to ride on Nibali's wheel. He's got his teammates. He's still got 3 teammates in the group. He's got Richie Porte, Michael Rogers and Chris Froome, but he wants to keep an eye on Nibali. He's waiting for the move to come from Nibali. I don't expect it to come here. As I've always said, the move will come on the Col de Perrosaude. That is where the Italian will attack.
Yes, it's also interesting to note, Paul, that TJ Van Garderen, who was accused the other day of not waiting for Cadel when he had those flat tyres, is still in the lead group. And, you know, if Cadel is feeling bad, I think Evans will have said, you stay here.
I think that's probably right, Phil. He starts the day in 7th place in the overall standing, the best young rider in the Tour de France this year, and I think he was probably given the nod by his leader to stay in contact with the group, because who knows how my body's going to react this afternoon.
Well, this is the Col d'Aspin, reportedly a much easier climb than the two we've just had, but those two have weakened the body, certainly of Cadel Evans at the moment. The camera's just catching up here with Gorka Izagirre. There's the top of the Col d'Aspin now as the riders continue to come up. Remember, Voigtler's gone over the top and Failure. And this is Kirienka is down there. Look at the time gaps now, 9 minutes 10 seconds as Basso brings up the yellow jersey, and more importantly for him, his teammate Vincenzo Nibali. We're just wondering whether Nibali will try an audacious attack. He's asking for newspapers here to try and put up his jumper for the Col d'Aspin, but I wonder if he'll push home. It's a real tricky attack. This is Cadel Evans as he comes up the climb now. A very definite time gap. He is a good descender, and he's going to have to prove it on this descent, because there's still the Col de Peyresourde to come.
Well, that's the big problem, Phil. He will take big risks on the descent, try to get himself back into the leading group with all of the other contenders, and then as soon as he makes the junction at the bottom of the climb, assuming that he does, he starts the final climb of the day, the Col de Peyresourde, which is a difficult climb.
He's looking as though he's struggling, but he's starting to keep himself composed. He's 10 minutes one down and 40 seconds behind the Wiggins group. Cadel Evans is in trouble on the penultimate climb in the Pyrenees. This is the narrow road descent now. We're caught up with the two leaders here. This is a tricky descent, this one. It always has been the Col d'Aspin. Over the years, we've seen riders fall on this climb on the way down. Not whether we wish that on them at all. Voeckler taking second wheel here. His day's plan is near perfection. He's now only 6 points off being the leader in the King of the Mountains.
That's what he was looking for when he got into that breakaway. That's why he responded very quickly to the early attack of Dan Martin, who all of a sudden then ended up in serious difficulty. Dan Martin, the Irish rider, was trying to blow that 38-man group to pieces. He succeeded in doing that. In fact, he also succeeded in getting rid of Thomas Voeckler on the early kilometers of the Col de Tourmalet. But after that, Voeckler rode himself into a nice rhythm and managed to reintegrate the lead of this race. And then, over the summit of the Col de Tourmalet, he decided he was going to take off, and he's done just that.
This is the chasing group of Voigt, Izagirre, Sorensen and Vinokourov, not in that order at the moment, as we see Voigt and Vinokourov here going down the Col d'Aspin. The peloton itself stringing out, and it's being spearheaded now by team Liquigas Cannondale.
Well, there are still 4 riders in that group of the yellow jersey, and only 2 riders in there from Liquigas. There is Cadel Evans with Armel Moinard, his teammate, trying to reintegrate the yellow jersey group on the descent. He will take risks. He is a good descender.
And he could bridge that sort of a gap as he comes off that top hairpin bend.
But the question is, can his body recover enough to do anything on the final climb of the day, or even just stay in contact?
Well, because Nibali has come right to the fore in that lime green helmet there, but his teammate Basso, Wiggins himself has taken command of Team Sky, and his own teammates are behind him now because he's marking one of the danger men. Nibali sitting 3rd overall in the race as the 2 leaders are off the Col d'Aspin. And get ready, because we're going scaling the mountains again.
Well, they're now in the town of Arreau, and this is the confluence of the 2 rivers, the Neste d'Or and the Neste de Luron, the 2 big rivers. The one of them you can see just over to the left-hand side. They've got around about 3 or 4 kilometers of reasonably flat road before they start the climb. They'll turn to the left away from the town of Arreau, and that's when the climb of the day, the final climb of the day, the Col de Peyresourde, will start.
Actually, no, a nice pizza restaurant just under that bridge on the left, Paul, as we turn left. Massive crowd in Arreau, best I've ever seen, I think, for the passage of the leaders of the Tour de France. Well, as they now start to make their way from Arreau onto the lower slopes of the Col de Peyresourde, the news now is that a first day in the Pyrenees has cracked the race defending champion which is Cadel Evans. It looks as though for the moment, as we head for the last climb, that Bradley Wiggins has tamed down the pressure being applied by Liquigas Cannondale. Next stop, the Col de Peyresourde. The beauty of the Pyrenees, where the vultures fly freely once again, and they're soar to new heights now because they've been spotting the Tour de France and the highest peaks today. And on the climb of the Col d'Aspin, the defending champion Cadel Evans has shown he is fallible and has cracked. He can't close down a gap, but he is closing in. He's around 20 seconds behind the Wiggins group at the moment. There is Wiggins in yellow and squeezing his squeeze to talk radio, obviously chatting with the car behind. Chris Froome just in front of him. Nibali sandwiched between the Sky Boys, Ivan Basso, and the other rider working very hard now is Jürgen van der Broek. We switch back to the Cadel Evans group here. He's got teammates in. Marcus Burkhardt descended in the yellow shoes, then caught them up and is now driving at the front. 3 of them working their hearts out here to try and get Cadel Evans back in the race. He's only seconds away, but the trouble is very soon we're going to start the climb of the Col de Peyresourde. So let's hope he's not making personally too much effort. He's going to need that for when we start the last big climb of the day. Once we're over the top of the col, it's eyes down for the finish in Luchon, all downhill. Well, they're still closing in, Paul, but it's a long, solid chase. The 2 leaders, I have a feeling that they've both slowed down. They're both very tired.
Well, not surprising. This is a tough day. This is actually turning out to be a very tough tour, although it didn't appear to be in the first week of the race. But the accumulation of fatigue is starting to tell on these riders, which is why now we're getting a lot of riders dropping out. The day before we went up into the rest day in Pau, we had 6 riders pull out of the tour on a flat stage.
Well, the Col du Peyresourde is a nasty little climb to round a heavy day off. It's only rated as a first category climb, but it is very hard, this climb. 6 miles they will climb it. And looking now at Burkhardt, who came up from behind and has now gone off the chase, having done some work to try and get Cadel Evans back to the Wiggins group.
It's only about 20 seconds, the difference between the Cadel Evans group that we're following here and the Yellow
on the
group.
tail.
Oh, they've done it now. They've just managed to do that. But for Cadel Evans, he's just going to make the contact, Phil, at the start of the climb. The question is, can he recover and stay in contact over the Col de Peyresourde?
Well, the group comes back. Cadel Evans rejoins the group, where he'll find his white jersey teammate TJ Van Garderen, and Cadel has a team around him here. Sky are under pressure a little bit, but at the end of the day, when you get to the last mountain, it's down to the leader of the team to do the work. Evans has rejoined the yellow jersey of the Tour de France, and in fairness, he didn't have to make any big effort. His team did it for him.
Yeah, the team rallied around him and paced him back into this group, but now the question is, can he recover for the start of the next climb? Because the way we've seen Lotto Belisol and Liquigas Cannondale ride, they're going to try and hit Bradley Wiggins very hard on this climb, the final climb of the day. And I've always thought that the Col de Peyresourde is almost like having a mountaintop finish, especially when the finish is in the town of Luchon, which is at the bottom of the descent. If you go over the top with an advantage of a minute, you're not going to lose very much of that on the descent into Bagnères de Luchon.
Richie Porte, the Tasmanian, is the man doing the work on the front for Team Sky, followed by Chris Froome, who lies second overall in the race. And daily the newspapers say he's the stronger of the 2 between himself and Wiggins, but he's declared his colours. He is racing for Wiggins to win the Tour. There's 3 very strong men there to frighten everybody away. The 2 leaders are under 25 kilometres from the finish now. They start the climb of the Col de Peyresourde, 9.5 kilometres to the summit. So that's the banner, and now he knows it's the last climb, and if he wins this, he takes the lead in the King of the Mountains competition. What a day out for Thomas Voeckler. He'll be the toast of France again. He's won 1 stage already, and he's worn the King of the Mountains jersey once this year. Finished 4th in the Tour de France last year after a battle to try and make the podium. Didn't quite happen. The wind is blowing a little bit now, especially as we climb the mountains. This is the second group on the road. And this is Kirienka, who's gone back from the leaders to the pack. Wiggins, so they've been washed up. That was Chris Froome on the left, just handing a bottle back to the Tassie rider, Richie Porte. Chase group now under 25 kilometres to go. They're not that far behind. Computer says 55 seconds. for Voigt, Sorensen, Vinokurov, Izagirre. So we're just taking a look at the road. They can't see those riders yet. No, I don't think they're around the corner there. So that's, they're still out of sight. They're certainly not out of mind. If we were to get these 6 riders together, Voigt had become the favourite to win because he will take risks on the way down once we're over the top of this climb. Looking good. While we were away momentarily, these 2 riders have unhitched again, Voigt and Izagirre. Just leaving then Sorensen and Vinokurov to push on once more. We're now on the Col de Peyresourde. It takes us back up to nearly 1,600 metres and 15.5 kilometres and 9.5 miles to go once we're over the top.
Proving to be a hill too far there for Jens Voigt. Gorka Izagirre is trying to ride across the gap to the other 2. And they're just in front of that Astana team car, but they're now starting to, I think, close in on Thomas Voeckler here this afternoon because the recent time check shows they're at 45 seconds.
Yes, these 2 seem to have the legs, and again, Chris Anker Sorensen saying to Vinokurov, we've dropped them again, let's put some pressure on, because the tenacity of Voigt, they only have to slow down and they'll be back again.
A little bit of a chat there, Phil, between these 2. In fact, they were talking to say that they needed to work together as a group to try and eat into the advantage of the 2 leaders.
Looking down the peloton, the men in black have got back in control of this as they start the lower slopes of the Col de Peyresourde. Any plans by Cannondale, Liquigas Cannondale? Well, they've gone back on the back burner by the look of it as they've fallen behind the yellow jersey.
Yeah, but they will wait until they get to the steep part of the climb because that's the part of the climb that will suit Vincenzo Nibali, and that's the point I expect to see the move come from Jurgen van den Broek, who, having seen Cadel Evans being dropped, will be thinking about moving up 1 more place in the overall standings himself.
Team Char going through up towards the front runners for the moment, so maybe a bike change coming on there the way that team car's moved up. Anyway, we'll take the peloton onto the lower slopes of the Col de Peyresourde, where, and as you hit us, we have just seen Tommy Voeckler hit Bryce Feydeau. He's just gone as he now tries to race to the summit. He knows that the chase behind is closing in of 2 riders, Chris Anker Sorensen and Alexander Vinokurov. They are just behind. And now it is up to Tommy Voeckler here to go for gold. And if he gets the top first, he will get the lead in the King of the Mountains. And if he's up there on his own, he's just got to descend about 9.5 miles into Luchon to win the stage. Well, the gap is there. This is 1 minute he looks absolutely exhausted. The next minute he's gone.
Well, he's just that kind of rider, Phil. He's an impulsive rider. He rides with his gut, he rides with courage, and he rides with instinct. And that's why today he's not riding with a race radio, he's not riding with a race power meter. He's doing it old school, if you like. This afternoon he's riding with his own sensation and his own feeling for the bike race.
Right, he's reading his body messages without the use of machinery. The group behind Wiggins still and not under pressure. They're approaching the start officially of the climb now of the Col de Peyresourde. This rider here, who's the teammate, and Jerome Pinot, the teammate of Bryce Feydeau. He's got himself back into the group there. He was in trouble on the Tourmalet.
This is Raim Tarameh. He was in that group of 38. He was also hoping to move up a bit in the overall standing. He's 3rd place rider in the Best Young Rider competition, but more than half an hour behind the American rider TJ Van Garderen. TJ Van Garderen's closest competitor is going to be, just not quite sure what's going on, it's going to be Thibaut Pinot, who is less than 2 minutes behind.
Well, he's just looked over his shoulder there to see exactly where everybody was, and they're all now out of sight as they start the climb up here. This is now Michael Rogers has come back to the front for Team Sky. He's keeping control of this race now. They're trying to prevent any move by the race favourites by setting the pace at the front. And that's their tactic now, because they've got to the last mountain and nobody's done anything to hurt Wiggins. The Col de Peyresourde now. This will be for the this is further up the mountain, this, because this is the chase group now. Let's have a look here as the peloton now go under 25 kilometers to go. This is Thomas Voeckler, and he's gritting his teeth there, and I think that's because somebody patted him on the back. Yes, it was. He really didn't want that at all. He wants to get on with his climb. He is now on the attack here. He's already won 3 stages in history, the last one coming last week at Bellegarde in the Tour de France, and now this year he's looking, today rather, he's looking to take the lead in the King of the Mountains and the stage as well. An heroic attack through the Pyrenees by a Frenchman. A man that never says no. He doesn't know how to say no. When he came to this tour, he had an injured knee. He was afraid he would not last the first couple of days. It turned a little bit bad after a week, and then it's come good. In go the glasses, and out of the saddle he goes. So as we look here now at Thomas Voeckler, we are here on the race radio. The pressure's gone on at the front of the peloton, and there is why I think it's Lotto who are putting the pressure on Paul, as Voeckler only thinks of a victory now.
Well, there'll be lots of flurries of attack in the main field, Phil. This is the ideal place for a launch pad to a victory. While at the front of the race, an acceleration now coming from Chris Anker Sorensen. He's hoping to try and pull himself back into the bike race here this afternoon. Just in front of him, I caught a quick glimpse of Bryce Fellou, but the first place rider on the road is still Thomas Voeckler. He keeps looking down the mountain all the time to see the position of himself and everybody else. He's only got 5 kilometers left to go.
You say
Stake Supreme.
Evans here as he continues to be paced by his faithful climber Moignard, the Frenchman, dragging him up through the debris of dropped riders. This may look as though it's just a casual pace by the team leaders, but it's an incredible pace that is dropping riders one after another from that bunch.
Well, just getting himself back onto the yellow jersey group there is Jani Brakovic, the Slovakian rider on Team Astana. So we're down really now, Phil, to all of the men in the top 10 in the overall standings except Cadel Evans.
That's right, because Heimars Rebeldia is still here. TJ Van Garderen, who's looking to try and move up at least one place. Meanwhile, the pain, you can feel the pain in this man now as he claws his way to the last 1 mile or so to the summit of the last climb of the day. Well, they love Thomas Voeckler, there's no doubt about that, and what a great tour behind the British, the French are having here. The spread at the moment, Sorensen is still 1 minute and 12 seconds behind this lone leader.
Well, there he is, wearing number 1. He's caught and passed the leader of the King of the Mountains competition this morning, Frederick Kessiakoff.
Kessiakoff, I must say, would have been a surprise to see number 1 there off the back of the bunch. Let's have a look at this was earlier on. Oh, this is Thomas Voeckler now in the last 2 kilometers of the climb here. The crowd cheering him on. And this was earlier on. The crowd are blocking his approach. All he wants is a little bit of space now to ply his trade and win the top of the climb and win the lead in the King of the Mountains, as he's being hunted down by Chris Anker Sorensen there at 1 minute and 15 seconds. That's Jani Brakovic, who's now been unhitched from the yellow jersey group here, but still in here, and there he is. No, that's Edward Vorganov, the champion of Russia. He's cracked. Kessiakoff also still looking better. Sorry, Kruijswijk, the superstar from Rabobank there, still in this group. Just Basso is the man setting the pace, followed by Richie Porte of Team Sky. As they continue on the way, Cadel Evans has now been left. It looks like he's on his own as well. He can't even hold on to Moignard, his team leader, at the back of him, and he can't match the pace of his teammate Cadel Evans. What a horrible day he's having now. Well, as we look into the eyes of Cadel here, he's just got a couple of kilometers to the summit, but it's a silent world for Cadel now. So just a reminder that today's commercial-free stage is brought to you by Nissan and the 2013 Nissan Altima. 5 kilometers to the summit for Cadel Evans. 3 miles of purgatory for Cadel Evans now, as here he's really getting annoyed now with the fans who are bugging him because the adrenaline is coursing through the veins of Thomas Voeckler. He's coming up towards the summit of the Col de Peyresourde, where he will become the next leader of the King of the Mountains.
He's also coming to the steepest part of the climb, Phil, as the yellow jersey group goes through 20 kilometres to go. Pierre Rolland may well be the next man from the top 10 to crack here, because number 29 there is in all sorts of bother.
Well, looking at this group, the black jersey just in front of number 29, Pierre Rolland. You've got Chris Horner. He was down a ravine earlier on today after the first climb. He climbed out, they gave him a bike, and off he went, and he's still in the group.
And now Ivan Basso, they really are trying to put the stranglehold on this race this afternoon. But look, in second position, Sky, Richie Porte. Fourth position, Sky, that's Chris Froome. Bradley Wiggins just sitting there. His face, Phil, is not showing any emotion at all.
Neither is Nibali, just behind him, but Nibali is not gaining a second here. Chris Froome is pacing his teammate and leader, Bradley Wiggins. The challenges of the day are almost over for the yellow jersey. A day that he'll tick off with pride, because they're not going to get the time on him now, even though Basso is making superb efforts. This rider's getting ready for the long descent to the finishing line, because Thomas Voigtler is heading up to the top of the Col de Peyresourde, and then he'll take the lead in the King of the Mountains. All that remains will be to win the stage as well. What a day. And there's the attack, and it's come from Vincenzo Nibali as they approach the summit of the Col de Peyresourde.
There's no panic though. Look at Team Sky. They're looking around, discussing what to do, how to respond to this attack, which we knew was going to come, and they knew was going to come. And the man chasing after him there is Chris Froome, and on Chris Froome's wheel is Bradley Wiggins.
Well, Nibali is looking to gain 2 minutes and 23 seconds. He'd be settling for a couple of minutes today, I can assure you. But on the other hand, he's also looking for only 18 seconds on Chris Froome to become second overall in the Tour. And I reckon that's his immediate thought.
Horner now in difficulty as they scramble to try and stay in contact, but now you've got this group. This is Jurgen van den Broek, who's been caught out by the acceleration of Chris Froome.
And look at this, two of them left, and Froome only left to pace Wiggins.
Well, that's all he needs. He's just sitting there, he's using Froome, and the discussions about possibility of treason from Chris Froome in a race like this. Well, where's the proof? There is the proof, Phil. Chris Froome will stick to his word here in the Tour de France this afternoon, and he will pace Bradley Wiggins up this climb, and very shortly, before they get to the top, they will be on the wheel of Vincenzo Nibali. First, second and third place riders in the overall standings.
No doubt now, though, that Chris Froome is sacrificing a Tour de France victory, as he did a Tour of Spain victory last year, for Bradley Wiggins here, but he's bringing him across the gap, and Great Britain are going to keep two men in the top two places in the Tour de France. Meanwhile, approaching the last kilometre, it's Chris Anker Sorensen in second place. The crowd is in a frenzy. Oh, this is Izagirre. He's rocking with fatigue. Or is it
Martinez?
It's Martinez. It's Igor Martinez out front all day.
Nibali's gone again, Phil. He's got out of the saddle.
Just out of picture is Vincenzo Nibali. There he is, but the pacemaking of Chris Froome bringing up the yellow jersey and his team captain, they are closing it down. Brilliant attacking on the Col de Superbannière, the last climbs of the day.
Yeah, you can see Chris Froome is just tapping out that pace as a great climber. He's taking advantage of this tailwind. Froome written down the side of his jersey there. Behind him, the yellow jersey of Bradley Wiggins. Wiggins has never really looked under any pressure at all, and having a man like Chris Froome alongside him has made him almost invincible. It's down to 5 meters now. It's almost done.
He knows they're coming back, and it is the brilliance of Chris Froome who has done it. As he's been reported as saying in the British papers, if he wants to win the Tour de France, then he must eventually leave Team Sky. But for now, he is leading Great Britain to a 1-2 in the Tour de France, and they put the Italian back into the British sandwich.
Well, he's come to the front now, Phil, and he will continue to set the pace like this. Bradley Wiggins has got himself into the position that he wants to, onto the wheel of Vincenzo Nibali. They've taken control once again. This is an amazing crowd receiving Thomas Voigtler at the top of the Col de Peyresourde.
As they hit the top of the Col de Peyresourde, Thomas Voigtler becomes the next leader in the King of the Mountains. Now, can he win the stage? Can he win the stage, Paul? They shouldn't close gaps on this. It's a flying descent all the way into Bagnes de Luchon now.
I'll tell you one thing, Phil. They will not bridge that gap to Thomas Voeckler here this afternoon. The only way he will lose the stage is if he goes round a corner too fast and he overcooks it, because with the advantage he has over Chris Anker Sørensen here, it's in the bag.
And a great ride too by the battling Dane here. 15 kilometers to go. And this is for Voeckler on the descent. As we go under 15 kilometers to go, Thomas Voeckler has just commenced the descent of the Col de Peyresourde. That descent will end on the finishing line in Luchon. Going up the other side, it is Chris Anker Sørensen. He's a demon descender, but then so too is Voeckler. It's going to be a great race to the finish now.
Well, it's over the 1 minute margin here for Chris Anker Sørensen. There is no way, even with his descending skills, he's going to bridge the gap to Thomas Voeckler. Voeckler is one of the best descenders in the business. I just hope he doesn't take too many crazy risks.
As approaches the line, Chris Anker Sørensen has got a bridge, 1 minute 28 seconds. I don't think he can do that, but we'll find out, won't we? Here we are with Voeckler on the way down, kicking out of the saddle at every chance. He's going to take risks now, a stage winner's at stake.
Well, the technical part of the descent of the Col de Peyresourde, Phil, is behind him. He will be knocking off these kilometres at approximately 1 kilometre every 60 seconds. And to translate that into old money, it's 45 miles an hour.
Meanwhile, the calmness as we go up the hill, because the big three are together. The top three riders in the Tour de France are being escorted by Vincenzo Nibali of Italy. As they go to the summit together, nothing is being gained or lost.
No, Nibali is taking the pride in setting the pace here. He doesn't want to be overshadowed by the two riders from Sky, but here we are looking at 1, 2, 3 in the Tour de France, while a little bit further back, Jürgen van den Broek is on the defensive. Sitting on his wheel is the American TJ Van Garderen, who should move up a place in the overall standings tonight.
And ironically, could be because of the demise of his team leader, Cadel Evans, who is not getting back this time up the long climb of the Col de Peyresourde.
Well, in this group as well, Haimar Zubeldia, who started the day in 6th place overall for Radio Shack Nissan.
Further back down, this is the Cadel group here. Still a long way to climb for Cadel, still being escorted by Moignard, the French rider on his team. It's his job to pace, with the Ukraine champion is there as well, Grifko.
Well, Cadel Evans, Phil, is going to tumble down the overall standings tonight, because already he's 3 minutes behind the yellow jersey group of Vincenzo Nibali, Froome and Wiggins.
Been a tough day for Cadel Evans. Now we're on our way down the mountain. Let's have a look a little bit earlier here. 2011 on stage 17. This was Thomas Voeckler racing down into Italian shores, and he almost went through somebody's front window there. Good job the gate was open, as you often remind me, and he gets back onto the road. He knows the risks have to be taken if you want to be a champion of the day on the Tour de France, and this boy always wants to be a winner. The pacemaking of Chris Froome, the Nairobi-born rider who says as soon as he retires he'll go back to Africa. But right now he's lying second in the Tour de France, and he is pacing Bradley Wiggins a day closer to becoming the first British cyclist to win the Tour de France.
I just noticed Nicholas Roach in this group as well. He's defending a high place in the overall standing, started today in 13th.
Look at the face on Brad Wiggins now as they come up towards the summit here. And just a reminder that today's commercial-free stage is brought to you by Nissan, proud partner of Radio Shack Nissan Trek. Chris Froome setting the pace for his man Bradley Wiggins. Nibali happy to follow now. Well, they're seeing the 1 kilometre to climb board, and Vincenzo Nibali consolidating his 3rd place overall in the Tour de France as we go under 10 kilometres to go for Voeckler. 10 kilometres, 6 miles, and he'll continue to freewheel at high speed towards Luchon.
Yeah, those 10
Whoa,
kilometres,
steady
Phil,
on.
he's using all of the road. He's taking all of the risks that he knows are necessary to get him some glory at the end of this day, the 16th stage of the Tour de France. He will be knocking off the kilometres at 1 minute at a time. That's 60 kilometres an hour average speed, 43, 44 miles an hour.
Sorensen has gone back. He's lost time on the descent because Thomas Voeckler is going down so quickly. He's clipping off those corners. He's got to be careful. Some of these bends catch you out.
They certainly do. Once you get down to the bottom of the climb, there's about 4 or 5 very tricky bends. But after that, it's plain sailing for Thomas Voeckler. He just has to keep the pressure on.
The face of Vincenzo Nibali. This is the battle for who wins the Tour de France. And look at Chris Froome here. He's hurting his 2 teammates, well, 1 teammate and 1 rival. And the face also at the back group of Jurgen van den Broek. They are behind. TJ Van Garderen, the young American, on the left in the leader as the best young rider in the race. And he showed that today because he's on the same team as Cadel Evans. And he's going to become the team leader by the end of the day.
Well, he will, because there's 3.5 minutes the difference between the yellow jersey group and the Cadel Evans group on the road, but there's only 30 or 40 seconds between the Wiggins group and TJ Van Garderen.
Just listen to this man now as he scorches through the wind of the Pyrenees. Passing the little village there of Castillon.
Nibali's attacking again, Phil.
Pressure's on again. Now has he caught Froome? Because Froome's been making the pace. Is Wiggins going to have to move by and take it for himself? I think he might have to here, because this is the last push by Vincenzo Nibali.
Well, it's a big acceleration. This man is in his own terrain. He's a great climber here, Vincenzo Nibali. He's making his way through this incredible tunnel of noise, and Wiggins has got the acceleration. He's trying to get the big old V8 diesel turbo whistling.
Well, the thing is, after 197 kilometres of mountain climbing, you don't allow your most dangerous rival to slip away in the last kilometre on the last mountain. And Wiggins has clawed his way back. It was a show of defiance, but nothing more than that by Vincenzo Nibali.
No, he tried, he fought his way, he knew he was still on the slopes of the climb. He was going to try again one more time to put daylight between himself and Chris Froome and Bradley Wiggins. But Wiggins responded. He didn't panic, he didn't try to jump onto the move, he just accelerated naturally and progressively up to the wheel of the Italian.
As we come to the top of the last climb of the day, the Col de Peyresourde, what it has shown to us today is the top 3 riders rightly hold the top 3 places in the Tour de France. Nibali, Wiggins and Froome go over the top, 7 3/4 minutes behind Voeckler. Well, that now all they've got to do is to go down to the bottom of the valley. They're going to be in amongst the results today, those 3 riders, as now we've got Haimar Zubeldia here. We have got TJ Van Garderen in the white, gritting his teeth. We have got Jurgen van den Broek, the next leaders in the classification. The only man missing, sadly, is Cadel Evans, the defending champion.
On the left-hand side there, at 23 years of age, is the American TJ Van Garderen. On the right-hand side, Haimar Zubeldia, who theoretically should climb up into 5th place overall tonight. Jurgen van den Broek expected to go on the big attack this afternoon. He will move up into 4th place, but it's only really, Phil, because of the demise of Cadel Evans today.
And the Evans group goes over the top 51 seconds after the 3 riders. The Van Garderen group, rather, sorry, has gone over the top 51 seconds behind Wiggins and Nibali and Froome, as we rejoin the front runner here now as he heads down into the town.
Yep, he's going around all of these corners. You can see the little bit of darkness in the surface of the tarmac there. That's where it's melted because of the heat this afternoon as we approach about 35 degrees Celsius on this penultimate of the Pyrenean stages.
Well, the result of the King of the Mountains and the Col de Peyresourde now means that Thomas Voeckler, with 5 kilometres to go, leads the King of the Mountains tonight by 4 points over Fredrik Kessiakoff and Chris Anker Sorensen in 3rd, but a fair way back. So this could be a great move today by Thomas Voeckler. He may well, in hindsight, have won in the King of the Mountain. Look at that face. Is this man determined or not? He races for France. He's never happier than when he's in the lead.
Well, Phil, you never would have expected this in the first week of the Tour de France, when he was still recovering from that tendonitis he had in the knee, which had him pulled out of the Criterium du Dauphiné, prevented him from riding the French National Championships. He was at the back of the pack on numerous occasions. Then all of a sudden, He's in the front of this bike race and he is enjoying himself. I know it's hurting like mad at the moment, but once he gets to that finish line in about 4.5 minutes time, he will be a very happy man.
Absolutely right. And what's more, the French are going to get a 5th stage victory in the Tour de France this year. That's almost unheard of since the battling days of Bernard Hinault over 20 years ago.
Well, as you can see, Vauclair keeps looking around each of these corners. He's now inside of 4 kilometers to go, and it's getting a little bit easier, the gradient, but it is for basically all downhill to the finishing line.
So as the Europe car professional Thomas Vauclair puts his back into the race downhill today, it'll feel just as hard as going up right now. This is Vincenzo Nibali, who's going down with the yellow jersey, and there he is, marking his man, all the hills behind him. A big day for Bradley Wiggins to tick off, and he hasn't conceded a single second of his yellow jersey. And Chris Froome has done his job. He kept his man in the hunt. Now he's being the ticket collector in the 3-man descent. On the climb itself, still going up, Cadel Evans, last year's winner of the Tour de France. He won't be taking the final yellow jersey to Paris this time around, as the clock still counts on over 11.25 minutes now.
Inside of 3 kilometers to go. Don't worry about the 7.5 minutes back to the main field. What's more important for Thomas Vauclair is the 1 minute and 50 seconds he's got over Chris Anker Sorensen, who is in 2nd place on the road.
Well, the situation, as you saw by the clock there, he's going to concede over 4 minutes to Wiggins by the time he gets over the summit of the Col de Peyresourde. So it will be his teammate, TJ Van Garderen, who will be the highest placed of Team BMC. The American proving to everyone that in the long term, maybe his turn one day will be to win the Tour de France. We are not far away now. We're getting into this beautiful town here. 2 kilometers now. We are in the streets of Bagnères de Luchon, one of the most famous towns throughout history in the Tour de France. If he doesn't stop at the finishing line, he goes straight on. He will go into Spain up the Col de Portillon. I've got a feeling he'll stop at the finishing line today. He's seen enough of the Pyrenees.
Well, I have to say, Phil, we're going to be looking at pretty close to 5 minutes deficit for Cadel Evans, and his dream of defending his Tour de France championship from last year will go out of the window in the Pyrenees.
Yes, Evans has gone over the top there about 12:15, which is 4 minutes and 50 seconds behind the yellow jersey. I think the spirit's gone. He realised this is it, and time now no longer important. He can't recoup it. Well, Thomas Vauclair was the last stage winner, by the way, in Bagnères de Luchon. That was stage 15 in 2010. So he's doing exactly what Fedrigo did in Pau 2 days ago, because he was the last stage winner in Pau.
Well, in 1983, the winner down here into Luchon was the great Scottish climber Robert Miller, who won the King of the Mountains. So I wonder if it's going to be the same thing for Thomas Vauclair this afternoon.
Enjoy this one, Paul. At 1 kilometre to go, Thomas Vauclair is already celebrating. He's looking over his shoulder. He may or may not know that Sorensen is chasing him, but he's not going to close a minute and a half now. Team car's gone up, shaking his hand. This is a great moment, and he's had some big moments in history in the Tour de France. This is the main street in Luchon here. This is where all the restaurants are. What a way, what a great day when you're French. Enjoy the crowd. He's a clever man, Paul. He's not taking any chances if he sees Sorensen come down that corner. Tomorrow he'll be in the spots of the King of the Mountains, and he was the King of the Mountains today, that's for sure.
Well, the amazing thing is, Phil, you might wonder why he's just cruising up to the finish line. He's not concerned about time at all here this afternoon, because he's so far down in the overall standings. Not like last year when he was 4th overall, but this year he's going to take away 2 stage victories from the Tour de France.
Straightens his jersey, does his zip up, and takes all the time in the world to salute his public in Luchon. That's how you do it. What a race it was. He was in a breakaway of 38 riders, almost from the gun. He got rid of them all in the end. He crossed the Pyrenees on his own. It's just a perfect day. He's now the King of the Mountains. He's won the stage. France have now won 5 stages of this year's Tour de France. Great moments. I can hear the helicopters over our commentary box as they come in. They're just on the right there.
Well, Chris Anker Sorensen, he fought to try and get himself back into the bike race here this afternoon, but he just did not quite have the power of Thomas Voeckler this afternoon.
Great moments, and Sorensen's closed in quite considerably, as you would expect, but it was never in danger, of course, of taking the big moment away. There's the celebrations behind. Here he comes. He grimaces all the way through the Pyrenees today. He got rid of everybody else. He couldn't hang on though to Voeckler when he originally attacked. He couldn't catch him up after that. He's still going to get a fine fight in second place.
Well, Phil, at the 3 kilometre to go spot, Chris Anker Sorensen was almost 2 minutes behind Thomas Voeckler. Thomas Voeckler did lose quite a bit over the last kilometre or so because he was enjoying himself, but he didn't have to worry about the buffer that he had over the man from Denmark here, coming into the finishing straight now.
In the shadow of the stage finish tomorrow, by the way, we finish on top of a mountain not far from here tomorrow. It's an awful long way the race route takes them. But today it is all about crossing the first day off the list through the Pyrenees. As Chris Anker Sorensen comes home now for a fine second place, there'll be quite a wait for the rest of the riders. That's about the biggest break Paul and I can remember over the years. A quarter of the field of the Tour de France got away today. These two were survivors from it.
Yeah, Anker Sorensen there will take himself at second place. This is Gorka Izagirre coming into the line next with Alexander Vinokourov with him. Vinokourov looking to try and get himself a podium position on the stage, and a little bit further up the road, still the 3 top men in the overall standings are on the descent.
Well, as they finish on the line there, they're racing for third place. We've gone down the road a ways now to just check out on the 3 overall leaders of the Tour de France, and they are still together. 2 riders of Team Sky command first and second overall. The one man who has threatened to split them up on occasions, there he goes, 51. Vincenzo Nibali has not been able to do that. He's concentrated his whole season on the Tour de France. He came to the Tour of California because he wanted good preparation. He turned his back on his home tour of Italy, and he's found just 2 men he cannot find the answer to cracking. They're working together now. How about that? The top 3 rides in the Tour de France are showing the pacemaking now, because there's not much you can do going downhill. And with every pedal rev, they are moving clear of all of their rivals before the last day in the Pyrenees tomorrow. This is the Evans group I think we've picked up here. This is down below, and it looks like Izagirre has just jumped at Vinokourov, making the left turn to the finish. That wasn't the plan for Alexander Vinokourov, because I think he would have been the best sprinter, so Izagirre better keep kicking here, because Vinokourov is a pretty fast finish. He's really upset about that, because he never got third. He's had to be content with fourth. Bryce Feylieu coming in, who only could have hung on to Thomas Voeckler on the way up the Col de Peyresourde. He might have won the stage. But that's only premise now, because it's 5th place for Bryce Feylieu. Shakes his head, couldn't do it. But at least there's nobody else who replaced him. So a top 5 finish for Bryce Feylieu on a great day out for France again. Disappointed. Nearly 4 minutes has gone by too. Made a big move today, and it didn't quite work out for him. Just watch this, the attack. Oh, he pulled his foot clean off the pedal. Look at that. And, well, that's the nature of the game. That's nothing unsportsman about that. You make your move, and he makes the mistake. Tough luck. And now Jens Voigt comes in. He'll be 6th. He crosses the line in 6th, and these are the 3 riders. They'll probably come in 7th, 8th, and 9th. And don't forget, just a final reminder that today's commercial-free stage is being brought to you by Nissan and the 2013 Nissan Altima. Top 3 riders, you don't often see this, the top 3 riders in the Tour de France after the first full day in the High Pyrenees race into Luchon, lock together. They'll be all still after all those mountains in the same time tonight. Tight old corner, but he gets around it as the top three men come home together, Paul. No change overall. Wiggins ticks off another day.
Well, the people a couple of weeks ago, Phil, who thought that Bradley Wiggins was in difficulty in the mountains and was about to crack, I think he answered all of those questions this afternoon. Here are the remaining survivors here coming in for around about 7th or 8th place. This is Dan Martin.
Should be for 5th, I think. We've had Bryce Failure come in.
And Jens Voigt.
And Jens Voigt come in. Yeah, Jens was 6th, so it's 7th place now. We're sprinting out as Dan Martin looks so strong as we approach the Col de Tourmalet. His manager even asked him to slow down on the first climb. He was showing how fit he was, but it went a bit rough towards the end. But nonetheless, it's been a long day out front for Dan Martin, and Laurens ten Dam is going to take him on for the sprint finish. They battle for the corner. Dan Martin goes through, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen. They're going to have to get on that. Oh, and he took it very wide as Dan Martin got through on the inside. I think he has. Martin finishing it off. This will be for 7th place in his first Tour de France and the first big mountain crossing of the Pyrenees. Well done, Dan Martin.
Well, he gets that. He was the man who really lit the race on fire from that 38-man group, but I think a little bit of youthful enthusiasm there as we see the top 3 riders, and they're still prepared to keep working, because for them it puts another buffer between the 3rd position of Nibali against Van den Broek.
And now they turn towards the finish here. They've established today one thing, that these are the 3 best riders in the 2012 Tour de France, and the 3 of them come home together. It'll be still Wiggins up front, it'll still be Chris Froome sitting 2nd, and it will still be Vincenzo Nibali in 3rd. But it looks as though Nibali is going to get something out of this. He's going to, no, he's not. Yes, he is. He's going to win the sprint at least. And I don't know what position it is, about 10th or 11th. I've lost count.
Well, there's plenty of riders coming now already. This is just a question of pride for Vincenzo Nibali to lead to the line, but Wiggins just stays on his wheel, and Chris Froome at the back.
He won't even give him 1 second here. Wiggins is going to finish in the same time. He's not giving him a single second. Nibali shrugs his shoulders. They're all same time.
Yeah, there'll be no change in the top 3, but there will be a change in 4th position, because Cadel Evans will drop down quite a bit. Jurgen van den Broek is here with TJ Van Garderen. Up there, the Irishman Nicholas Roach as well in that white jersey in 3rd position.
Looks like we should see Van den Broek, Rebeldia, Van Garderen all move above Cadel Evans, which means Cadel will drop down to 7th tonight, because these boys are gaining quite a slice of time over the defending champion. And again, they're all sprinting shoulder to shoulder, which means they'll all be given the same time. TJ Van Garderen in the white jersey, tucked in behind Jurgen van den Broek as we get round that corner.
Well, Nick Roach coming around that corner in 1st position, and with his ride today, Phil, he may well find himself moving up into the top 10 in the overall standings. He started the day in 13th place, but he wanted a top 10 finish.
He started the day in 12th because of the demise of Frank Schleck overnight, and so, yeah, you're right, he's going to be top 10, and that's a great result for Nicholas Roach. The 2 Irishmen having a great tour.
They certainly are. Now, this is Pierre Rolland, the next rider to come in. He should be riding alongside Jani Brakovic, but it doesn't look like Brakovic to me.
Hey, well, as they sprinted out down in Luchon for places, I can tell you the Evans group is still way on the descent, a long way out of town yet, about 2 or 3 kilometres before he does come into the finishing straight. So these continue to sprint for the minor placings now, one after another. How those mountains have broken up this field, and it just projected the top 3 riders as the best men in the Tour.
That was Jani Brakovic coming in there in possession in contact with Pierre Rolland, but they were a good minute behind the group containing Nicholas Roach. There's confirmation there of the finishing times, Phil. Thomas Vogler a minute 40 ahead of Chris Anker Sorensen, and Gorka Izagir in 3rd place. Big time gaps on the day.
Huge time gaps on the day. There's the happy moment at the moment. So this is the Evans group now in the shadow of the Col de Portillon, which is actually in Spain. It's the gateway between Spain and France, that mountain, and the teams are actually going over that mountain by bus after this, because they're all staying at the hotels in Spain tonight, with the exception of Vincenzo Nibali, who's actually in my hotel, and his team bus is currently blocking my car in. So the time gap went 1 minute and 9 seconds, so all of the seconds after that is what Cadel Evans is now losing overall to the top 3 in the race. And it's going to shortly be 3 minutes as we're in the street, but there's still a way to go. So it's over 4 minutes this at the moment, as we're watching the situation just now. There's 3 minutes has gone by. That's a big loss today, and it could tumble Cadel right to the tail end of the top 10 in the Tour de France. Nicolas Roche is climbing up as well tonight. Aymar Zubeldia, etc. So it's been a tough day for Cadel Evans, and it's always tough when you're the defending champion. You know the eyes of the world are upon you. He's put up a big show of defiance for nearly 3 weeks, but the 4 mountains of the Pyrenees, I think, has ended any hope of a high finish now in this year's Tour de France. He's 3.5 minutes back. We are 1 kilometre to go. The trees in the main street here in Luchon is freezing up our pictures at the moment. They'll liven themselves back up in a moment, I hope. As the clock continues to count, we'll show you a nice view of from the top of the cable car here, which is on the other side of the Col de Peyresourde. We're looking down onto the finishing town of Luchon. I'm just trying to work out where we are. I think it's the top of the picture where we're finishing there. Anyway, the pictures are back, and this is Cadel Evans turning towards the finishing line now. Still plenty of cheers for him from the crowd here in Luchon. There'll be a right and a left, and then they'll be home. Now 4 minutes and 10 seconds since Bradley Wiggins crossed the line, so it's a big descent now for the defending champion. George Hincapie is the man working his heart out for him, and you see his torn jersey on his left shoulder. His arm is bandaged, his knee has been sprayed. He crashed on the start of the descent of the Col de Tourmalet today, and he's still going to sprint the group home. So 7:09 was the gap, and it's going to be just on 5 minutes when he comes by. Thanks, George, for the effort, and I'm sure he'll congratulate TJ Van Garderen for staying with the leaders today and be the leader. Happy days at the back. He's just talking in French to the world. I think we can show you, first of all, the stage results coming at you. Just waiting for them to come up. And there they are. So Thomas Voigtler gets his 2nd stage win and France's 5th of the Tour. Chris Anker Sorensen at 1:40. Izagirre leads them home, and he yo-yoed all day and he still got 3rd, beating Alexander Vinokourov, and Bryce Feydeau getting the top 5 just on 4 minutes back. He couldn't hold Voigtler on the last climb. Battling Jens came home in 6th place. Dan Martin led a group home in 7th, and the top 10 completed by Laurens ten Dam. Just going a bit further down, this is where Nibali, Wiggins and Chris Froome locked together at 7:09. TJ coming in at 8:07 in 15th place today. The rewards will be a little rise up the overall classification tonight when we get to look at that. So he's finishing very, very strongly in the Tour de France. The first day in the Pyrenees confirmed one thing. Last year's defending champion of the Tour de France will not be this year's winner. Let's first of all have a look then at our Road ID ride of the day today. Well, who else could it possibly be but for battling Tommy Voigtler? In an original breakaway group of 38, he chipped away until on the top of the Col de Tourmalet. He was only left with the figure of Bryce Feydeau. Onwards he went to the Col d'Aspin. He was winning that mountain too. And once he was on the lower slopes of the Col de Peyresourde, he accelerated away. He didn't like too much of the crowd patting him on the back, but nonetheless he battled his way almost too much down to the finish at Bagneux de Luchon. And he came and he's in front of his own crowd, a grandstand finale for him. He had plenty of time to salute the crowd. You'd think he was on the curtain call of the best show in the West End of London. So as he came up to the line, he saluted his crowd. There's our Michelob Ultra overall standings. They've changed a little. Wiggins, Froome, Nibali haven't changed. There's a big time difference now to Jurgen van den Broek. So Aymar Zubeldia is now 5th at 7 minutes and 13. Van den Broek taking the place of Cadel Evans in 4th. TJ Van Garderen up 1 place into 6th at 7:55. Cadel Evans goes 7th at 8:06, just behind Van Garderen. Brajkovic is 8th, Pierre Rolland is 9th. Thibaut Pinot dropped towards the end. He is in 10th place. As you rejoin us now, we're on the Col de Monte. We're sprinting out the points here, and Kesiakov on the right is only 4 points behind Voigtler, and Voigtler is coming. Kesiakov put in a terrific sprint, but he's gone too early because Voigtler has decided to go now. Well, it's a long time since we've seen a great King of the Mountains competition like this. The top 2 players are now together on the first Pyrenean climb of the day.
Well, Voigtler had to use his own teammate there. We're not very far from the finish line. Voigtler kicks again. He sees the banner.
He looks casually around Thomas Voigtler and then kicks again. And now it's up to Kesiakov. And I don't think Kesiakov can get across to Thomas Voigtler, but has he gone too soon? It's Sweden versus France here. And there's only 4 points separating for the King of the Mountains title. But now there'll be a few more, I think, because Tommy Voigtler goes over the top. He gets 10. Kesiakov gets 8. So they're now separated by 6.
Yeah, just 6 points, but I tell you what, Phil, there's a lot more climbing to go. There's a second and a third category climb, but you know, there's towards the end, the Col de Port de Balles is an outside categorized climb with 25 points available. We may well go down to the final climbs before the Champs-Élysées to decide this one.
You may well be right. Well, there's no hurry for Tommy Voigtler now. He will start the descent off this mountain and begin to think of a small second category climb next, which will top out 55 kilometers of racing done, or 34 miles. Well, the fog is, we're dropping away again now. The big concern will be on the Porte de Balles, which goes over nearly 6,000 feet. And it's low cloud, actually, and it's blowing in on the drift because there's no real wind. Some moments it's clear, next moment we're in dense cover of white cloud. So we'll see how it goes over the next climb.
Ruben Plaza there on the right-hand side for Movistar, but more importantly, number 19, Haimar Zubeldia, is more than a minute behind. But I think after the violent start we've had, Phil, I think we'll see some sense coming back into the peloton and a slight slowing down for the next 30 or 40 kilometers. Well, that's what Haimar Zubeldia will be hoping for.
Well, they've got to be careful now. I've seen these conditions before, especially in the early races like Paris-Nice, and riders can take chances, you know, even down the hills, but I don't think Tommy will.
He's not taking chances at all. I've ridden in conditions like this, Phil. It's very, very sketchy, because as we get the results popping through, 10 points for Voigtler, 8 for Kesiakov. So in the overall standings now, Voigtler will have 117 to Kesiakov's 111.
Yeah, 6 points in it now. Voigtler ahead of Kesiakov in that battle for the final polka dot on Sunday in Paris. This is Kesiakov here, and you can tell by the way they're descending, they're frightened men just now.
Yeah, because not only can you not really see how the corner is unfolding, and in fact it's a little bit cold, there's a little chill factor coming in from that fog, but it's also putting a very moist cover on the surface of the road, making it extremely slippery.
Well, the next mountain is only second category, the Col de Arras, and that is 5 points for the first, down to 1 for fourth over the line. Boy, these conditions are very, very worrying at all for all of the... Oh, and you hear the gears crunch there, as that looked to me as though it was Martinez, Igor Martinez, trying to sort it out.
Yep, I think what's happening at the moment, Phil, we've got Jorge Azanza coming across the gap as well from Euskaltel-Euskadi. It's very, very dangerous to race in conditions like this. It's made more dangerous by the fact that we've got a combination of bad visibility and a very slippery road surface. I would think we'll see somewhat of a little bit of truce here, as one man we know will take risks going down any corner, the green jersey, Peter Sagan.
Well, he must have done, because he was going off the back earlier. He seems to be up near the front on the descent right now. They're not in any hurry here. These are not the conditions to take risks in, and they'll clear the mist as they continue the descent. We do go quite a long way down. We've topped out there at 1,350 meters. We descend now down to 600 meters, and we shouldn't have fog down there.
No, but it's very strange, because this morning, leaving the town of Bagnères-de-Luchon, the fog was actually in the valleys. It's 68 degrees Fahrenheit at the moment, 9 miles an hour wind, which is not really very much. I kept thinking that the fog from the valleys would get burnt off once the sun started to get very high in the sky, and I'm still hoping that is going to happen.
Well, the wind is out of the north today, so for the majority of the day, once they turn around the Côte de Beur, will be tailwind all the way to the finish, so they're going to have favourable weather there, I think. Anyway, this is Voigtler, who's done extremely well so far. He's edged 2 more points up on the King of the Mountains against that rider in front of him in the turquoise colours. So Tommy Voeckler will do his best to keep his eye on the man in front of him, which is Kesiakov. We'll continue to descend to the valley below. Well, I hope when we come back we'll be able to see the riders. So let's take a commercial break. There is some idea of the cloud that lies in the valley. This is Thomas Voeckler, almost going a bit wide on this descent. They're very worried, but the conditions are getting better now as we come lower down and away from the Col de Monte rather, but they're going to experience these conditions later on the Port de Ballas again, I would think. You never know, the magic of the clouds may blow them away by then. The race at the moment fragmented at the front. We've got Sandy Cassar, Alessandro Valverde chasing. We've got Martinez, Costa and Kesiakov trying to get up. Voeckler also on the chase as well. So as we continue down here now, everybody trying to get together. Meanwhile, Bradley Wiggins is still okay. So too TJ Van Garderen in the main field at around about 30 seconds. That's where we are on the left. We're just coming off the first number one there, which is the Col de Monte, heading down to the number two now, which is the Col des Arèses, and we'll top out there after 34 miles covered. The HC is the hard one today. It's all category, outside categorization. That will take us up to just under 6,000 feet today, and the last big high mountain of this year's Tour de France. Expect the attacks there for sure. Igor Martinez has crossed the gap, and we're now beginning to come to the front here, and we've got about 6 or 7 riders forming.
More dangerous though, Phil, is Vincenzo Nibali has got himself across on the descent into that leading group. Now we're going to have to say we're going to have to see some serious organisation coming from Team Sky, because they cannot let Nibali go too far off the front.
But we just saw Edward Boysenhagen riding off the front here now, and the team having to redress itself. Richie Porter's taken over for Team Sky here at the moment. This is interesting, Paul, but I wonder if there's been a little bit of disorganisation in that fog.
Yeah, well, I think there was, and I wonder if they didn't know that Vincenzo Nibali was in that group. They will do now that we've got visibility back, and they will start to get themselves organised. I'm not sure if they might back off a fraction, wait for example, Christian Knies to get back into the main field from behind, or whether they'll chase them immediately. But having Vincenzo Nibali go on the attack on a day like this is a very dangerous move.
Well, it's a very clever move, but he did say overnight in the morning's papers that he was riding very well now in the Pyrenees, and so was his team, and that the race wasn't done yet. He's got to attack early today to close down the time gaps required to win the Tour de France, and he's just slipped across more or less under cover of the mist on the mountain.
Well, talk about putting down a smoke screen, and he's taken advantage of that smoke screen. But we do know, Phil, he is a very good descender, and that's what he's taken advantage of here, and he was not scared at all. Obviously had the right tyre pressures in for a descent in the wet like this one.
We are looking at 107 kilometers to go. We are continuing our descent from the Col de Monte, and into this leading group, which is forming the other side of the mist, has come the worst man that could possibly be there for Bradley Wiggins, because Vincenzo Nibali has joined the leading group of 8.
Well, Edvald Boasson-Hagen, they've got Team Sky organised once again. The gap is 26 seconds to the leading group, and the presence of Vincenzo Nibali in that group is why we're going to see a big chase to try and pull him back into the main field. He's going to be happy with the situation for one reason, that he's putting pressure on Team Sky very early on.
Well, Nibali is the 51, at number 161 is Alessandro Valverde. We've also got Jean-Christophe Perrault of France, Sandy Cassar. We've got Rui Acosta, the winner of the Tour of Switzerland, Kesiakov and Voeckler and Igor Martinez. These are big names and riders who have been consistent throughout the Tour.
Well, I think Alejandro Valverde here is not too happy with the presence of Vincenzo Nibali in what he regards as his breakaway, because he realises that this man is so high up in the overall standings, the breakaway will not be given any freedom at all and will get reeled in.
Well, that's... I'm afraid this is a move to win the Tour de France as far as Vincenzo Nibali is concerned, and it's up to Boysenhagen to lead Sky. So an interesting move, and it's had to come early on in the day. There's still a long way to go today, and there he is, number 51, because Valverde doesn't like him being here. He was hoping to win the stage and not the Tour. Vincenzo Nibali is hoping to win the Tour de France. As they continue to race away from the Col de Monte, we'll have to take a break, but this is a big serious move today in the Tour de France. course a little bit. Wiggins has been to the back, checking to his team car. They've got the favourites back in the peloton, and this is a little attack here by the Statoni, who's really been active in the mountains, the Italian climber on the Lampre team, but he's not in the front. We still have those 7 riders out in front and a number of counter-attackers trying to get away from the head of the peloton, knowing that the Sky team are not going to chase them. They're too far behind. Doesn't look too happy, does he, Vauclair, as he heads up in this breakaway. This is Igor Martinez, the Spanish rider. There's Tommy Vauclair. Doesn't like to be in the lead by the look of it at the moment, but he's doing extremely well. He's increased his lead in the King of the Mountains today with his win over the Col de Monte. And this is a chasing group of 3 which got itself away. This is Laurens ten Dam, more than 3 now. It was 3 last time I saw the pictures. But these boys have just shot across the gap. And right on the back here, Levi Leipheimer, who was off the back not long ago. Chris Anker Sorensen going through. There's Levi. He was off the back of the peloton. He came back, went straight to the front, and he's come off the front of the bunch. And he's now hooked up with a rather big group trying to cross the gap. So as we watch the race try to re-establish, well, before the start this morning we had a camera on the Radio Shack Nissan Trek bus, and here's what we heard.
Nibali want to win the stage. He say he.
Yeah, and then Louis says like, okay, I feel like yesterday was on the climb maybe the strongest, but I couldn't drop it. But tomorrow's finish on the top, and I didn't want to stage so far. It's going to be more than difficult to win the Tour, but I want to win at least a stage, and tomorrow is a chance because it's up to the finish. That's what he said.
Yes. Anyway,
sounds logic.
just have a look on. I think today. Max.
Me, yeah. I know. Max,
You are the Jens Voigt of the day. Now, a big group. When you are there, it's and you stay with economy. I don't need to explain you. Well, Jens is difficult to explain economy with him, but Jens is Jens. But okay, you know what you have to do.
Well, that was Alain Galopin giving the instructions, and that they know that Vincenzo wants to win the stage if he can't win the Tour de France. It's a big day for him. Tried to move, but it wasn't going to be the one that worked, so he's gone back to the peloton. It's up to Radio Shack to try and take advantage of the move by Nibali, which I suspect will come either on the Porte de Balles or the final climb up to Périgueux itself. This is the breakaway, still showing signs of fragmentation here. Santi Cassar scooting off on the right of the front of our picture there. This is back to the peloton, and the Liquigas boys of Nibali have come to take over the pacemaking for the moment, and Sky are quite happy to let them do that. The next challenge of the day will be the second category climb of the Col des Ares, as we're not far away from starting it, and it's not as high as we've been before, so maybe those clouds you can see off to the left won't be on top of the riders when we get to the top of the Col d'Ares. Well, it'll be a little while before we get onto those slopes. The breakaway trying to consolidate itself. The 7 leaders, 10 chasers, and the peloton. There he is at the back on the climb now of the Col des Ares. Let's have a look at the standings as we go on to the second climb of the day. Vauclair has now increased his lead to 6 points over Kesiakov, who is just in front of him in that turquoise jersey, and Sorensen not in the breakaway today at the moment. He might be soon though, because there is a move coming up here which does contain him, led by Laurens ten Dam. They're timed at about 56 seconds. This is the main field, and look at this. It's the Liquigas Cannondale team of Vincenzo Nibali now who's setting the pace, and not Team Sky. 5 kilometres to go for the main field on the climb now. It's a 6 kilometre climb in all, and when we top out at the top, we'll have 55 miles to race down to the race up to the finish rather at Périgueux. We've never finished the race at Périgueux before. We climb the whole of the Col de Peyresourde, go down about 3 kilometres and then climb 3 kilometres up to the finish. Merci Thomas. And so that's the man there who's in the polka dot jersey. The summit of the Col des Ares at the moment, as the pace is being hotly set at the front here by Alejandro Valverde, who wants to try and make this attack work.
Well, Vukla there in the polka dot jersey is sitting on the man closest to him in the overall standings, and he knows there are only points available for the first 4 riders to cross the line at the top of this climb. 5, 3, 2 and 1 point. But all he wants to do, Thomas Vukla, is just keep finishing ahead of his closest rival there, Frederic Kesyakov. Kesyakov will have to, I think, ride this one a little bit more cleverly tactically, because he knows Thomas Vukla, all Vukla has to do is watch him.
Yes, he does. We've just passed 1 kilometre to go to the summit, and this is Igor Martinez. The same 7 riders are taking the pace. The gap is 1:23, slightly closing in. A very early attack. Now, that's a surprise. Now, this is a huge sprint for Thomas Vukla for just 5 points, and that caught Kesyakov off guard. He wasn't expecting him to go this soon, and he might have made a mistake here.
Well, he's made the move a long way from the finish line. It's going to be a long, hard slog for Vukla here. Keeps looking over his shoulder, but still Kesyakov hasn't quite got to the wheel, so Vukla cruises to the line. 5 points for him, 3 to Kesyakov, so now his lead will be 8 seconds.
Well, that, as Paul says,
8
gives
points.
him 5, so he's now 2 points extra, so he's now 8 points ahead in his battle for that polka dot King of the Mountains jersey. So Vukla gets first and Kesyakov gets second. That was a good move, because that was not expected by Kesyakov. He caught him well.
But that's why Vukla spent all of that time over the last kilometre or so, Phil, riding behind Kesyakov. He wanted to have the eyes on the man who's his closest rival and take the advantage of a surprise attack.
Peter Weening setting the pace. This is the second group now, followed by Lawrence ten Dam, 2 Dutchmen on the front. 2 different teams, Orica Green Edge and Rabobank. They come over the top, about 46 seconds back.
Yes, but the main field, Phil, are closing in on everybody, because the main field are now only at 1 minute and 20 seconds. And when they go over the top of the climb there, we get an idea of just the exact distance back that they are.
And they're under the escort, not of Team Sky, but of Liquigas Cannondale, because they're searching for a win for their leader today, Vincenzo Nibali, and they won't let that breakaway go.
No, they won't. This is, again, Kesyakov and Thomas Vukla. Vukla will sit up now and wait for the rest of that group to come back to them. But this slight slowing down may well give the advantage of the 11 chasers, who are about 3/4 of a minute behind.
1:26 has gone by. They're saying 1:29, but it's changing. Well, it's going to be around 1:30 as they go over the top. 1:30. So as they've gone over the top, 1:30 down, let's have a look how it all happens now in the King of the Mountains. There's the result as we saw it. Vukla, Kesyakov, Kassar, Martinez, 5, 3, 2, 1 points. So Vukla now reads this by 8 points now. 122 plays 114. We can forget the other names. They can't win this trophy now. So we continue on the descent to the valley as the front of the race regroups here after an epic sprint. Date on the King of the Mountains competition. This is the yellow jersey Tour de France situation. Bradley Wiggins leading for the 13th day today by almost the same time gaps for those 13 days. 2:05 on Chris Froome, his teammate. 2:23 on Nibali and Vandenbroek at 5:46. Cadel Evans slipped from 4th to 7th, but TJ Van Garderen, the American, he came up from 7th to 6th yesterday. And there is the yellow jersey looking at the cameras now as they are reorganised here at the front now, Team Sky. There is a chase group, but we have heard that Chris Anker Sorensen crashed on the descent. So 1:32, we didn't see him fall, but he's not with the group and he has been reported as crashing, so he probably will finish up back in the bunch, I would think, Paul. Chris Anker Sorensen.
You might just have noticed at the side of the road they're stopping to have a nature break. That was Bradley Wiggins and a couple of his teammates standing alongside him there, so I don't think anybody will take advantage of this. It's one thing that a lot of riders, it's almost, if you like, an unofficial truce. It happens more often on the mountain stages than it does on the flatter stages.
Yes, I should have been able to warn you to look the other way there. There's nothing we could do. With live pictures on the Tour de France as the gendarme there waves his yellow flag. That's for danger in the Tour de France of what lies ahead. In that case, it was a very narrow approach to the village as Liquigas Sky, and up comes Peter Sagan on the same team to help them in the pursuit now of the breakaway. 1:40 is the gap. They've been chasing pretty hard under the impetus of Liquigas Sky, but there's been a neutralisation call by the race for a natural break, I guess. We're watching here the yellow jersey running back through the cars and back into the bunch. Chris Anker Sorensen, the Dane, he was in the second group on the road. He has been reported to have crashed on the way down the Col des Arènes. Nothing more known, and he's not in the group anymore either.
It's pretty difficult to keep coverage of all of the action. We have between 3 and 5 motorbikes on each and every day, and not always all of them can be in all of the places around the peloton. This is the second group on the road.
Yes, it is, and it's 35 seconds, so they are edging their way forward to the 7 riders up front. Yes, and tomorrow morning the Tour de France continues on the NBC Sports Network, back to our regular time at 8 Eastern, and we'll be leaving the Pyrenees behind us, and it may be a day for the sprinters. Tune in nightly at 8 Eastern for Tour de France Prime Time, always on the NBC Sports Network. There's the Church of Saint-Pierre here as we pass through the town of Saint-Pé-d'Ardèche and catch up with the leaders. This is now the front group. The rider at the back, 209, Peter Weening, has crossed from the chase to the front on his own, which has been a sterling ride because the boys he left are still 20 seconds behind. So Martinez, Costa, Valverde, Cassar, Thomas Voigtler up there, Perrault, Kesiakov, and just coming on the back, number 209, Peter Weening. The time gap's not ringing alarm bells back in the Bradley Wiggins peloton. Kesiakov ducking and diving at the back of this leading group. It can't be long now for the rest of the riders catch up, though. There are 9 chasing. That's going to give us 16 men up front, Paul, and all the points gone in the green jersey competition when we get there.
Yep, but down to a quarter of a minute now. This is Kesiakov having a chat there with Rui Costa. Kesiakov, a rider who's been to the Olympic Games on 2 occasions for the mountain bike in 2004 and 2008.
And he'll no doubt be on the Swedish road team this time around.
Well, the sun seems to have come out on the finish line, so it should be a good ride for the riders in the last 40 kilometres of the race. The last 40 kilometres of the race taking in, as far as I'm concerned, 3 major climbs. The Porte de Balès is the first one, and then you've got the long climb up through the Col de Peyresourde, and then, of course, a slight descent, and then the climb up to Peyragudes, which is a new ski resort that the Tour de France has never been to before.
Yeah, it's just looking out the commentary window here on the top of the finishing climb. I have to tell you, it is there is a ceiling of cloud, but it's staying well above us just now. It could be a nice climb up to the finish day, because we've never been to the finishing line at Peyragudes. We've been over the Peyresourde a few times in the history of the Tour, but never up and onward to this little ski station. I can tell you that the local baker's makes the finest croissants I've ever tasted in my life. I don't know why we've never been here before.
Well, actually we have. We stayed here a couple of years ago when the race finished, the last time the race finishes in Bagnères de Luchon, but we got here very late at night and we left very early in the morning.
Bakers were closed, it wasn't good. 2:35 the gap. It looks as though that little break for nature has caused the peloton to desist just a bit, as we now have a nice little group of 17 men now. They've all come together at the front. So that's where we're headed to now. The next challenge of the day is that 3, which is nothing, a third category climb. We go through the sprint, not important today, the feeding station, and then we go up the big climb of the day, the last all-category climb of this year's Tour de France. That is the Porte de Balès, takes us up to just on 6,000 feet above sea level. There's an awful lot of racing left in today's stage of the Tour de France, so don't go too far away. We'll take a break.
A long time. I think the first thing they should have done, Phil, because the car hadn't actually come up to Richie Porte, that was one of the team helpers who was at the side of the road. They should have come up very quickly and just changed his bike and got him onto a machine as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, you're right, the car wasn't there. There was nobody with the feeding soigneur either. As we look here at Alexander Vinokourov, 189. The breakaway still moving clear at the moment. They've shunted a few more seconds out at 2:46 for the leading group.
Well, that was Azanza on the front, and he was followed by Gorka Izagir.
Yes, they'll probably, some of them will know there's been a crash in the feed, but it hasn't involved the yellow jersey or the race leaders, which is the best news of the day as far as Bradley is concerned. But they will miss, if he doesn't rejoin, the strength of Richie Porte a little later on the climb of the Porte de Balès.
Yeah, very important because they're already down 1 man. They lost a man in the first week of the race, Konstantin Sivtsov. This is a big move by the Spanish Armada here this afternoon. There's a rider coming across, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was, of course, Alejandro Valverde.
I think it's got to be, because we're not officially on the climb of the Portobalas, but we are now definitely in the ascendancy. And so as we spin around, this is the Bremavec is the town.
This is the castle of the Counts of Comminges. It's all that remains of it is the keep that you can see in the middle there. It was listed as a historic monument in 1950. The castle was built between the 12th and 13th centuries.
Well, the news reaching me that at the back of the field, Mark Cavendish has rejoined the field with a little help from his friends, and we're now waiting to see if Richie Porte can get back. There's Cavendish on the tail of the bunch as we look up at the breakaway here at the moment.
In fact, there's a very clever little move here. Azanza, Gorka Izagirre, Ruben Plaza is the Movistar rider who's come across, but I did see the shadow of another Movistar rider trying to get himself into this race.
Well, the climbers at last from Spain have found their métier here. They're getting into the last big climb, which would link Spain just over the hill. And now they're able to have a go themselves. We haven't seen too much of the Spanish this tour. There is Cavendish now at the back. And we might be able to have another little look at that feeding zone crash. Bags were going up, held by one man. He's the team soigneur. He was looking to pass them up, but don't know how the crash happened. We just saw all of a sudden, as they snatched for the bag, the riders begin to fan out. So clearly, the bag may have caught the handlebars. The soigneur may have forgot to let go. Who knows? It could be any reason for causing the crash. But he picked out the two Sky riders, and only the two Sky riders, Richie Porte and Mark Cavendish. There's the peloton being driven on by the whole of the Liquigas team. So they've got plans to do something either on the next climb or the climb to the finish. Merci le Tour, thank you to the Tour. This is the breakaway group, and they're now in pursuit of a couple of riders who have now gone clear. Here they are, Gorka Izagirre, Zanza and Ruben Plaza have tried to push on the very, very lower slopes of the Porte de Balès. This is a climb, once we get onto it, which goes up for nearly 12 kilometers, which is about 7 miles they'll be climbing for. We'll take a break. Well, that's the climb we're on, the Porte de Balès, and Liquigas are still controlling a very, very rapidly diminishing peloton here. Poor Chris Anker Sorensen at the back with his damaged hand. Sorensen there, I should imagine his left hand extremely painful. As Rui Costa making a big move here in the mountains, the winner of the Tour of Switzerland. And the rider who wins the Tour of Switzerland as a pre-race to the Tour de France usually distinguishes himself in this race. Just seeing one or two riders in trouble now. Christian Knies is at the back of the bunch, a useful pacemaker for Team Sky, but perhaps not on the big climb like the Porte de Balès. Also slipping away there now at the back is Azanza, who has been in the breakaway all day.
Well, not surprising, Phil. They used a lot of energy to get into the breakaway, stay in the breakaway, and now all of a sudden they've been damned to the back of the pack. Reim Taaramäe, who was a great pre-race favourite for the white jersey competition, he's having a hard time staying in contact with this group.
Yes, and it's Chris Anker Sorensen looking as though he's not going to stay there for very much longer at the back either. As the leaders now, well, these aren't the leaders, this is the chasing group. They're being timed at approximately 47 seconds behind Rui Costa and his chasing group of 5. This is, in effect, the third group on the road, with Johnny Hoogland here on the left.
Peter Weening.
Oh, Peter Weening, sorry.
Peter Weening is trying to ride away from this group. Johnny Hoogland being caught and passed by the main fielder. Alexander Vinokurov sees this as a possible chance to get a little bit of a ride across the gap this afternoon, as Rui Costa has really put a lot of pressure on, but the two riders from Euskaltel Euskadi are coming back into this race.
Yes, it looks like the leaders are taking him back into the fold. That will make 6 men. This is the race for the yellow, was briefly anyway. They're the men who are looking after the yellow jersey of Wiggins. This is the last big climb. One more climb, and if Wiggins leaves these mountains in yellow tomorrow, you won't find anybody who doesn't believe he won't win this Tour de France.
Well, it's gone back to a minute, the group Vogler, so they don't have the firepower left in there at all. And again, there's no expression on the face of Bradley Wiggins. He just sits on the wheel of Vincenzo Nibali. He's just crossing off these days one by one. Now, Nibali is going to have to finish this off, Phil, because he's down to just 2 teammates, although one of them is an exceptional rider. The man in second position there, and that is Ivan Basso.
A little bit of a problem for Ruben Platzer now. He was in the lead group. He was even in the front 2 riders. He's now going off the back of the yellow jersey peloton there. As the third group on the road is the Voigtler group, and it looks as though they're splitting up under the impetus now of Peter Weening.
Yeah, Peter Weening has seen this as a great opportunity, and I tell you what, the riders in the leading group are still actually not losing any of their advantage to the peloton, which is being led by Liquigas Cannondale. Just noticed they'd stopped all the team cars over to the side of the road, Phil, and that's an indication that the main field is about to catch the Thomas Voigtler group.
Well, I must say that Rui Costa here looks extremely cool climbing this mountain. He's got a great tempo. He keeps checking over his shoulder because he's looking for Valverde, his teammate, but on the other hand, he's keeping the pressure on to make them chase him. He doesn't want that Liquigas Cannondale squad to cross the gap.
No, he certainly doesn't. Peter Weening now joined by Stortoni in second place, the Italian rider. Behind him, it's Frederic Kessiakoff and Thomas Voigtler. As he did yesterday, just follow the wheels around these Pyrenean mountains.
The first time Voigtler's been beaten in the Pyrenees in the last 2 days. He's won every climb until now. I don't think he's going to win this one unless there's a sudden slowing down of the attackers on the front.
Well, Stortoni now setting the pace ahead of Kessiakoff, trying to ride across this gap, but they've got to find a gap of 53 seconds, and the main field now is just about a minute behind them.
Yes, and 2 minutes the spread. They're coming in. The bobbing style of Chris Anker Sorensen, his left-hand bandage, and he's not moving it around too much on the handlebars there, which is a great shame. He crashed early on today, coming down the Col de Monte, and he's really in some pain here. Mind you, he always looks like that on the climbs.
He does. Coming across now to rejoin the gap. Dropped a few moments ago, Sandy Kassar and Alexander Vinokourov, but they've still got a long, long way to go to get to the top of this climb.
So we've got one leader, we've got a group chasing containing Voigtler. They're all beginning to get pretty anxious here in that main field as well. 2 minutes back. So as we're looking here at Rui Costa, let me remind you, won the 8th stage last year when we climbed up to Superbest. That's when he launched the attack. Weather wasn't quite so nice as it is in the Pyrenees today, and Rui Costa, we didn't know a lot about him last year, but since then he has won the Tour of Switzerland just before this year's Tour de France. A great victory for him indeed for the Movistar team. He comes here now as a leader in his own right, and there he is on the climb, and it's looking to me as though he is still pulling away from the field. Well, we're looking at just over 3 miles to the summit. That's for the leader, a little bit more for these guys, but Thomas Voigtler, Kessiakoff starting to bridge the gap right up to the leaders again with Perrault.
Well, this is a strange action in this group. It keeps splitting up and coming back together, stretching apart again and coming back together in the main field. This has been all for one man on this race day today. It's for Vincenzo Nibali. He sits there in third position in that line behind him. The man who we would like to dethrone away from the yellow jersey position, of course, that's Bradley Wiggins.
It's the young German rider, Dominic Nerds, who is on the front there, being trailed by the old experienced Italian on the squad, Ivan Basso. Their job is to do the pacemaking for as long as they can, but they are hoping that sooner or later Nibali will be able to go 5 kilometers, 3 miles now for the man who's leading the way up here, the Portobello, and this is Rui Costa.
Yep, and he's only 15 seconds ahead of Izagirre and Martinez from Euskaltel Euskadi, Valverde, his own teammate, and Levi Leipheimer. Bill Kadri, the French climber who started a lot of this aggression, he's been left behind, and he's only just in front of the Thomas Voigtler group, which over a minute behind now.
Just a little bit shallower than 10% the gradient right now. This is a tough part of the course here. Costa's looking very contained, handling it all very well. He's pulling away, I think, from that chase group. And can Thomas Voigtler, and here he is now dancing at the back behind 187, which is Frederic Kessiakoff. These two, one of them will win the King of the Mountains title on Sunday.
No, that's absolutely certain, but they will battle all the way up to the Champs-Élysées stage. as Vukla keeps looking over his shoulder. He knows he just has to stay in contact with this man. He's stretched his advantage today in phenomenal style after garnering the lead yesterday on a big Pyrenean raid. He went over the top of all of the big climbs in the Pyrenees in first place, and that's what allowed him to take the lead in this competition. But I think he was pretty impressed with the stage victory as well. Rui Costa, he's only a youngster, 25 years of age, but he's been racing at the top level of the sport since 2007 when he was a member of the Portuguese team Benfica. He was then picked up by Cees d'Epargne in 2009, and the first year riding for the big squad, he actually won the overall classification at the 4 days of Dunkirk.
The gap to Vukla now is 39 seconds. Biel Kadri seems to be in between. The chase is trying about 15 seconds of 4 riders behind this man, Costa. Well, the last time we climbed this was in 2010 when we had the Andy Schleck Chain Gate affair, and the man who was first over the top then, Thomas Vukla. And it might turn out this year to be the only Pyrenean climb he's not going to be first over the top on.
Well, I don't think he'll complain too much about that as long as he can stay in the polka dot jersey at the end of the day. Nibali there, this is still Chris Anker Sorensen is doing an incredible job just to stay there, and his teammate just in front of him, the Olympic silver medalist from Athens, Sergio Paulinho.
Oh dear me, look at all the drying blood on the white handlebar tape there. He fell pretty heavily on that descent of the Col de Monte, but that guy just does not know the word give up.
I noticed only just spotted Cadel Evans. I've been looking for him for quite some time, but Cadel Evans is in this group. He's not too far away from the back wheel of Bradley Wiggins.
Good riding by Rui Costa this. It's a tremendous rhythm. It's trying to drag that chase group along, which contains his captain in there, Alejandro Valverde. The gaps continue to oats. The Wiggin group is at 2 minutes at the moment. 2:01 as we see on the board there. Looking off the left side shoulder here of Rui Costa, who's leading the way now up the Port de Balès. We're getting up to the cloud line again, but this man is trying to plough a lone summit here. Paul, he is probably about 3.5 kilometers from the top now.
Well, he'll get a chance there because there was a sign just over the side. A lot of these Pyrenean mountains, in fact, they do the same in the Alps. Thank you very much. 4 kilometers to go. They put these signs up for the cyclo-tourists who come from all over the world to ride these climbs during the off-season when the Tour de France might not be here or might be a long, long way away, and it gives them an indication of what the climb is like.
So just to explain the spread then, we've got Rui Costa still on his own here, being chased by the riders he left, Izagirre, Martinez, Valverde, all Spanish, and the American Levi Leipheimer. Here they are at the moment, being led by Martinez, followed by Valverde. Leipheimer just popping in our picture. Biel Kadri, who was in the lead, has been dropped. He's somewhere down the mountain. And then we have the Wiggins bunch still being escorted by the right riders here, Liquigas, Cannondale. They are now sweeping up Laurens ten Dam, who was in front at the start of the climb.
Yeah, Thomas Vukela's group will probably be the next because they're at 1 minute and 14 seconds behind the lone leader, Rui Costa. But I think this group now is down to 3 because Gorka Izagirre has disappeared. We've got Egoy Martinez is the rider from Euskaltel Euskarel doing the pacemaking on the front, followed by Alejandro Valverde. He's just sitting there and waiting for... Oh,
he's
no,
going.
he's not.
No, he must have heard you. Because he's gone. That was an acceleration to join his teammate just up there in the shadows. No chance of lifting that pace from Levi Leipheimer or by Egoy Martinez. That was the plan. He was waiting for the moment to join his teammate.
Now you wait and see what happens to that gap now to the other riders who remained in that group, because once he gets the gap, I think Rui Costa, Phil, was just sitting there waiting, tempting them to allow Alejandro Valverde to come across the gap, and Valverde, when he jumped there, it was an incredible acceleration.
There was a wry smile appeared on the face of Costa when he looked over his shoulder. He was waiting for the move. When he saw it coming, he thought this is now the second part of the plan. And now they'll allow Valverde a little minute to just get his breath back, and he might well then push on in the hope he can win this race on his own today. In miles, it's not that far to go. In kilometres, saying 35.5 kilometres, about 22 miles to the finish. But once over the top of this climb in about 3 kilometres time, you've still got the last climb to the top. 4 kilometres to the peloton.
And the altitude at this point at 1,400 metres. It tops out at 1,700 metres, which is not far from 5,500 feet. So it's a tall climb this afternoon. 157 slipping away from the main field. That is Laurens ten Dam. He's gone from the group into the peloton off the back of the race.
Now look at the face of Valverde. He's done the bridge to his teammate, and now he knows it's all down to him. He's got to apply the effort while he's got the chance, because the groups behind might well come back, and not least the Liquigas Cannondale led main field. So it looks as though Costa paved the way, but he's dropping back as Valverde now makes his effort here to win the day. Yes, he's had 3 career stage wins in the Tour de France, but he hasn't been in the Tour de France for quite a long time because of his affairs with dope. He last rode the Tour de France in 2008 when he finished 8th, won 2 stages, and he wore the yellow jersey for 2 days. Now he's back. So remember, he was the rider that went in the breakaway today and did not like the presence of Vincenzo Nibali join them. They had a big discussion. Then Nibali said, OK, I'll go back to the field, because he was a hunted man for the overall. Nibali awaited the yellow jersey of Bradley Wiggins, and Valverde stayed in the breakaway. And that breakaway still in danger of being caught by Nibali, because it's his team which are now chasing him. This now is still doing his own pacemaking. This is these two are going away for the private battle now. This is lower down the slopes, but still ahead by about 1.5 minutes, the Bradley Wiggins group. This is Thomas Voeckler following the back wheel of Fredrik Kessiakoff. 1-2 in the King of the Mountains, making this a very private battle on the Porte de Balès. 124 points plays 115, 9 points difference. There's plenty of points on the mountain for them today. The 25 points, though, could be swept up by this man who's not interested in 25 points. He's more interested in winning the stage. So this is in fact one of the leaders being picked up now by Thomas Voeckler in the polka dot and Kessiakoff, as they're sweeping them away slowly one by one here. That was Izagirre who's been caught. We still have Alejandro Valverde out on his own. In the next group will be Martinez, Costa and Leipheimer who are chasing, and then we're going to see Voeckler and Kessiakoff coming up next. Peter Weening in our picture now. He's a little bit further down, and not far behind him is coming what is left of the peloton. And this here is the peloton at the moment. Michele Scarponi, number 41 rather, is just passed off the side of our picture. Dan Martin is the rider, number 65 from Garmin Sharp, who's done another good ride for the team today. This man, though, is pushing on. He's looking for the 1 kilometer sign to the summit. Alejandro Valverde. We're getting into the region where Alberto Contador attacked it just at the same time. Andy Schleck locked up his chain when wearing the yellow jersey a couple of years ago. This is the capture of Sandy Cassar now by the tempo riding of Dominik Nerz, the German on Liquigas Cannondale. Another one they can tick off. Cassar goes back. Nerz still keeps the pace going. Sitting at the back here is Vinokurov. He's been passed. He hasn't got far to go now for the bunch. About, oh, there it is, 2 kilometers, that marker on the right.
Yep, and that's what we're looking for. Vinokurov tried to get himself into the breakaway, looking around the corner to see what we're looking at. That's the next 3 riders on the road. That's the Thomas Voeckler group. They've just picked up Gorka Izagirre. Voeckler still hoping to survive and get himself a few more points.
Well, could he catch up with this man and go tops again over the top of a Pyrenean col? He's won every one so far. Not just today, but yesterday as well. I think it might be a big ask now to pick up Alejandro Valverde. There's quite a good descent off the top of this climb before we start the last climb of the day. 1 kilometer. That's the sign Valverde will be pleased to see.
Yes, for Valverde, he will go down this descent field like a madman. Sandy Cassar caught and dispatched her very quickly.
And the legs go.
Little sign on the road there, crikey Cadell. And that's very Australian.
Very indeed. There's plenty of Australians here. I think there's as many Australians as any other country represented on the Tour de France this year after the success of Cadel Evans last year. Chris Froome in the black there on the left of our picture, always seeking out the yellow jersey of Wiggins. Richie Porte, who fell at the feed zone. His left arm is bandaged, but he's back right up there now with his team captain.
Well, if my calculations are correct, Phil, Thomas Voeckler is looking at 6th place still at the top of this climb, with his arch rival on the left-hand side in the turquoise jersey, Frederic Kessiakoff.
So as far as we know, it is Valverde in the lead, possibly Igor Martinez also on his own, then a group of Kadri, Costa and Leipheimer, Voeckler, Izagirre and Kessiakoff. That seems to be the situation.
Well, that's a nice sign there, Phil. Coureur français fait nous rêver. French riders make us dream. Well, they have done this year.
They have. They've had a great tour. 5 stage wins, and now they've got a man in the polka dot jersey, but those British flags there are for the riders still to come up the slopes. Bradley Wiggins. 148 to Voeckler's group. That's a big gap he's built here. He's free to fly at the moment. 2:19 to the group Maillot Jaune.
Well, in fact, Valverde now is 35 seconds ahead of his own teammate, Rui Costa, and a group was formed a little bit further back of Egoy Martinez, Bill Kadri and Levi Leipheimer. So 2:20, and in fact, Alejandro Valverde is stretching his lead over the main field. Another man to get dispatched by the peloton this afternoon, number 71, that's Jean-Christophe Perrault. He will try and get himself up to the finish line in a better time as possible. I have to say there's a lot of riders now in this last week of the Tour de France are showing real signs of fatigue, and that's not a surprise because the 3rd week of the Tour is always very, very difficult indeed.
Well, they may not be Spanish, and then on the other hand, those people on the right certainly are. They recognise a Spaniard when they see them, as Valverde pushes on for the summit, and the 1 kilometre for the Liquigas-led main peloton, what's left of it. Paul, Danish television are actually reporting that Chris Anker Sorensen may not have fallen off, but his fingers got trapped in the wheel of his bike when the newspaper he was putting up his jersey stuck in his wheel.
That is a very nasty thing to happen. Those blades are going round very rapidly indeed, but for Alejandro Valverde, no mishaps on today's stage. He's had bad luck in the first part of this year's Tour de France, but here he will crest the Porte de Balès in 1st place.
Very narrow at the top as he gets the 25 points, which he's not interested in. He wants the next mountain, and then he'll be looking directly at the finishing line. We don't finish on the actual summit of the climb. We go on to the next climb at Peyregoud, which he doesn't count in the King of the Mountains.
Well, just put your seatbelt on right now because we're about to take in a very dramatic descent off the top of the Porte de Balès as these riders still have to get to the summit. They're looking for a 6th place finish for Kessiakoff and Thomas Voeckler in 2nd position. A bit bumpy there around the corner, Alejandro, as he uses all of the road. He's a pretty good descender, Valverde. He's a great bike handler. He's a good sprinter. He's a real all-rounder. There were times when Spain thought he could have been a man to win the Tour de France. He's won the Vuelta a España in the past, but he's always had a little bit of a hard time when he's come to race at the Tour.
Seemingly the most popular rider this year on the Tour de France, according to the social networks, as he goes through, flicking the bike left and right, knowing now he's only got to descend down to the bottom and then climb up the Col de Peyresourde. This is the race for 2nd place at the moment. The race for 6th, we think, at the moment. We haven't got cameras now to show you Costa, Martinez, Kadri, Leipheimer.
In 3rd, 4th and 5th possession is Egoy Martinez, Bill Kadri and Levi Leipheimer. So these guys will be looking for the 6th position over the top of the car. Alejandro Valverde has got himself maximum points. They're in fact saying that Egoy Martinez has gone through there in 2nd place, so he must have recovered and joined Rui Costa.
Well, Martinez and Costa should have gone through as they're now sprinting it out here, and this is again pretty easy for Thomas Voeckler. He is the King of the Mountains of the Tour de France. He has been the strongest man whenever it matters. He goes over the top and he opens up the gap again. Another points gained there for him.
Yep, for Thomas Voeckler, it's just keep chipping away, and that's the important thing. A little bit further back now, is this a move coming from Jürgen van den Broek after the whole race has been set up by Liquigas Cannondale?
Well, Vincenzo Nibali said, I wish the other teams would attack Wiggins. Well, here you are. This is Jürgen van den Broek, but it's all too late, Paul. The horizon is just up the road. and nobody can gain time attacking at this stage of the race.
Well, the thing is, if you look how well that the man at the front, Alejandro Valverde, is going, he's stretched his gap there to 2 minutes and 20 seconds. He actually pulled 30 seconds out of the chasing Liquigas Cannondale team.
So they've gone over the top, about 2:28 for the leaders. They're all snatching those newspapers now to put up the jerseys to keep out the chill air as they begin the dizzy descent into the valley. You can hear the wind rattling our motorbike camera now as Valverde makes the descent. A little bit of mist around.
Well, that's going to make it a little bit more precarious for him, but on these descents, a descent like this, you'll be approaching about 60 miles an hour. I've seen speeds of 70 miles an hour on some of these big cols in the Pyrenees, especially on the descent of the Tourmalet. You lose a bit of speed here because of the corners, but you're still right up there at the top end of your red zone.
Accelerating all of the time, and he sees a road with a shallow bend ahead of him like that. He puts the gears in. Now, many of you are asking, we never see the riders change gear. Well, in the old days, of course, they had to move the hands to the gear lever, which was down on the down tube of the bike. These days, they're on the brake levers, and they just rock the brake levers to change the gears.
Yeah, but watch the way this man corners. He's exceptionally good at this. He goes over to the left-hand side of the road. He uses as much of the road as he can, cuts across the apex as we get in the rough read of the overall standings now. It really is Thomas Voeckler is stretching out a very long way in that competition.
Yes, and he's also stretching out because now is an important descent for Thomas Voeckler. He has gone over the top in 6th place. Leipheimer was 5th, Voeckler was 6th, and Kesiakov was 7th, so the gap is now out to 11 points.
Well, there you can see Alejandro Valverde has it in the biggest gear on his bike. He has a large chainring on the outside, which will have a 53-tooth chainring on it, and at the back he'll be using an 11-tooth sprocket, and that makes it a much bigger gear than the normal bikes that you can pick up from the bike shop. But these guys use massive gears on the downhill to push those speeds up to the 55-60 miles an hour level.
Now, to come in from the right-hand side of the road there rather than the left, because now he's completely out of line for all of these corners. He's lost a little bit of time. He's had to brake hard, but he's going to get back into the swing as he sees the road ahead. He's now dead straight.
It's always very difficult when you get 3 or 4 corners in a row, because you get the line right into the first one, but then you lose it after the second, and you've got to concentrate again to get yourself back into the right line around all of these corners. Valverde has got a 50-second advantage over 2 chasers, Egoy Martinez and his own teammate Rui Costa. 1 minute and 38 seconds back to Kadri and Levi Leipheimer, but 2 minutes back to the Thomas Voeckler group.
So at the moment he's continuing to hug the right-hand side, needs to swing over to the left as he makes this corner.
Well, he does. He brings it over to the left. These are real sweeping corners, I have to say, though, Phil. Not that technical at the moment. Once you start to, you can look over to the right-hand side down there. You can see where the leader of the race is. He's got all of that convoy of cars following him. And this is Frederic Kesiakov, I think, trying to chase after Thomas Voeckler.
Which is a complete reversal of the way it's been on all the hills so far today. Voeckler has been riding behind and a long way behind Kesiakov. Now it's more urgency because he wants to catch Valverde and win the stage. Looking across the spread, Paul, they're still coming. I've got a time gap 2:22 at the moment, but really all the breakaways are going down this mountain 1s and 2s.
There shouldn't really be much change in the time gaps as we go down this descent, because all of these guys are riding at the top speed that they can attain, and that's about 60 miles an hour. So they'll come to the bottom of the climb with pretty much the same time gaps as they had going over the top of that penultimate climb of the day, the Porte de Balès. 50 seconds to Martinez and Costa, 1:38 to Kadri and Leipheimer, 2.5 minutes to the main field. So Alejandro Valverde should start the final big climb of the day, the Peyresourde and the Périgord, in position with about 2.5 minutes over the main contenders.
Well, he's just gone under 25 kilometers to go, so he's about 10 kilometers of continued descent, and then he'll run into the town of Saint-Aventin, and that is where the climb will start up the Peyresourde. It doesn't, there's no prize at the top of the Col de Peyresourde. He goes over the top, descends for 3 kilometers, and then continues to climb to the finishing line on a road we've never used before, and that's where the prizes are awarded. So as they continue down, it is now the big move by Alejandro Valverde. And with only 24 kilometres left to ride on today's stage of the Tour de France, the race favourites have been able to do absolutely nothing to the lead of Bradley Wiggins. Well, the crowd here, as he comes around very tight on that right-hander there.
No, he did. He went into that. He braked halfway around the corner. But what you have to do, you've got to be in the right gear as well, Phil, because when you come around a corner, you've lost a bit of impetus. You've got to knock it down a couple of gears so that you can accelerate again quickly up to top speed. But Valverde has got his cruising speed in here. I'm sure he's got cruise control here this afternoon, because that's what you need to get down these mountains. When he gets to the start of the next climb, we'll get an indication of whether or not he's going to survive. You see how he's knocked it up a couple of sprockets there because of the fact that he's no longer on the full descent.
Well, this is Kesiakov at the moment. He's trying to nail back Thomas Voigtler, and he's slowly clawing his way back, I think, but Voigtler is a demon descender.
Oh, he certainly is. We've seen that too. We saw that on yesterday's stage. He used the downhill to his advantage. He's not really pulling away from the yellow jersey group, because he's only, by my estimation, Phil, about 20 seconds ahead of the yellow jersey group of Bradley Wiggins and Vincenzo Nibali and all of the other pre-race favourites.
Well, I think he is closing in on Kadri and Leipheimer as they disappeared around that top bend, so he might cross them. Here they are. They're the next capture. 25 kilometres then for Thomas Voigtler, and just the motorbikes in front. He's coming in on Biel Kadri and Levi Leipheimer.
Yep, he goes straight past that race motorbike. There is a motorbike that gives out all the information to the race radio and the referees, and then it gets transmitted to us in our ears in multiple languages. And we used to be predominantly French, but they give a lot of the information on the race radio now in English. Bradley Wiggins feels the best place for him to descend here is on the wheel of his closest rival, apart from his own teammate Chris Froome, Vincenzo Nibali. But there are still a lot of riders in that group from Team Sky.
They've just gone on the 25 kilometres go. They're closing in on the riders up front. The chase by Liquigas Cannondale may be having an effect here. This is the leader. We haven't forgotten about Alejandro Valverde as he races on now, but the whole Tour de France is in hot pursuit of this lone leader. He would prefer to get back onto the climbs right now.
Well, he has caught them. He's caught the two riders in front of him, but he looks over his shoulder to see what's the position of Liquigas Cannondale and the yellow jersey.
Well, they're not that far behind. I would say about 35 seconds, maybe 40 seconds, and that's all. But Leipheimer gets on it. This is Kesiakov. He's also going to bridge the gap, just taking a little bit longer to do it.
Yeah, he has. The one man who has disappeared in the crossfire is Gorka Izagirre. He was in the group with Voigtler and Kesiakov as they started the descent. But Voigtler took a few risks around the first couple of corners. This man there trying to get some gel on board to keep his energy levels topped up for the final climb of the day, the Col de Peyresourde and Périgueux, which are joined together.
Picking up one of the Euskaltel riders there now. I think that was Izagirre, is back in the peloton. This is the riders from Liquigas. Push on. Yes, it is Izagirre. 2:38. They're saying the gap is from Valverde down to Nertz, who is leading the peloton. He's still doing a sterling job, that young German, for Vincenzo Nibali. Well, the next climb after this is the Col de Peyresourde, which is also joined to the finishing climb of the Col de Périgueux. And Steve Perino was out earlier today, and he's done a report on the climb. Let's hear from him.
Guys, we are on the final climb. At this point in the race, the riders will have climbed more than 10,000 feet. Complete insanity, trumped maybe only by the lengths these fans are willing to go through in order to get a look at their favorite rider for what, maybe 15 seconds? We talked to some French fans coming from Thomas Voigtler's region. They were dressed in the flag of that region, and dare I say, little else. They have been here for a full week, and lucky for them, 2 different stages on these very climbs. Yesterday they got to see Voigtler win. They're hoping to see that happen again today. And the Norwegians, it seems like they have emptied out Norway to get a look at some Edvald Bosenhagen. They love that man. The folks we talked to, 5 weeks vacation they get every year. 3 of them they have committed to watching the Tour, from Liège all the way to Paris. And I'll tell you one thing about this crowd, not really concerned with that rule about not drinking before noon. So far, I've been offered quite a bit. My excuse, though, guys, I'm on the wagon.
I wondered how you were walking up that hill, Steve. I'm glad you showed us on the bonnet of a car. Well, that's the finishing climb today, and it just tops over down to the finishing line at the end of the day. So we're still with the leader here, and he's still desperately flying to the start of that last climb of the day. 20 kilometers to go. Well, this is Alejandro Valverde. He has just swung off the descent of the Port de Balès, and he, oh my goodness me, this is Rui Costa here. Completely missed that corner, but at least he was okay. He misdirected there. He could not make the speed. This, if he goes that way, he'll be in his hotel in Luchon in about 4 kilometers. So he's got to go right. This is the climb that they came down to finish in Luchon yesterday. Now they've got to climb back up it, and that was Rui Costa. Bad mistake there, but he's going too fast, and he could not get around the right-hander. So now he's got to pedal his way back, but his teammate didn't make a mistake there. Alejandro Valverde is ahead at the moment. This is now Leipheimer and Kadri. They've done it okay. Heart-stopping moment there, Paul. I thought he wanted an early shower. He's going down to his hotel there in Luchon.
Well, it was very nice of the organisation to put an exit route in the way for him so he could change his direction.
Absolutely. This is Thomas Voeckler here now as they continue up the hill. They came down to the finish yesterday. Big moment that was for Thomas Voeckler yesterday. Now he's got to slog his way back up. We go right over the Col de Peyresourde onto the Pere Goude, and it takes up to a height of 1,603 meters, and it tops out 1 kilometer from the actual finishing line today.
Well, from this side here, Phil, it's pretty much the same gradient most of the way up, between about 7.5% and 8% the gradient. It does seem to get, it feels as if it gets a little bit tougher once you get up to the top. Voeckler is about to get picked up by the main field, because there is the group of the yellow jersey. In third position, still waiting to make the attack, is Vincenzo Nibali.
They're all back together in the peloton. And that is Kesiakov gone back in now. Now they know they're picking them off, but the one man that they're noting has not come back here is Alejandro Valverde, the Spanish former champion, who is still climbing very, very well indeed. They cannot wait much longer if they're thinking on catching him.
Well, there are only 3 riders now remain in front of the main yellow jersey group this afternoon. Is Alejandro Valverde, who is on his own at 15 kilometers to go.
15 kilometers to go for Alejandro Valverde. He's tapping out the rhythm there. He really is. This is Igor Martinez. He's the next on the road. Costa went off course. He'll be in the distance somewhere. Voeckler, Kadri, Leipheimer back in the field. Well, they are now, because this is Leipheimer.
Well, Leipheimer now back in the main field, having a look at the yellow jersey. Still a lot of black and blue jerseys there supporting Bradley Wiggins. In front of Wiggins, though, it's still Vincenzo Nibali. I would expect an attack to come from Nibali, Phil, around about 3 or 4 kilometers to go to the summit of the Col de Peyresourde.
Well, he's played his cards on the Port de Balès. It's all or nothing for him now, Alejandro Valverde. And just look at the speed. He's got a really good rhythm on this climb. It's fast here, Paul. It gets harder as we get higher.
No, it certainly does, but this man, he really is on a mission this afternoon. This is a brilliant performance by this man from Spain who's coming back from suspension. We saw the form that he had in the early part of the year, as you mentioned earlier, in the Santos Tour Down Under, when he was the winner at the top of Old Wollonga Hill and finished that race in the same time as Simon Gerrans, but on a countback, Simon Gerrans got the victory on points. But here, he's riding in a super motivated way. I think by the fact that we're so close to Spain, there's a lot of Spanish spectators come down to the Pyrenees, and the Spanish riders, whenever they come to the Tour de France, feel that they're almost on home turf.
Valverde on his own, Igor Martinez on his own, chasing Rui Costa on his own, chasing the other two, and then the peloton. That's the layout of the land right now.
Well, this is the damage at the arrière du peloton. Kesiakov slipping away now, as is Sandy Cassar, 141. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the next man to be Levi Leipheimer. Yes, and there he is.
Well, they've gone through and out. This looks like the rocking style of Chris Anker Sorensen, who put both his fingers into his front wheel apparently today, trying to get some newspaper out of the wheel, and he's damaged his fingers. But he's still just dangling off the field. It looks like Thomas Voeckler, but he's done enough today to lead the King of the Mountains competition away from the Pyrenees tomorrow. He's built a lead of 11 points over Kesiakov.
Yeah, just in front of him, Bill Kadri, one of the other riders, survivors of that early breakaway. He's holding onto the main field for as long as possible. Once they leave this small town, though, now, Phil, they start to get into the barren area of the summit of the Col de l'Aubisque. They get battered a little bit by the wind this afternoon.
Well, we're looking down there, the 15 kilometres for the peloton. We're looking up at the leader here, who will be delighted when he sees 10 kilometres to go, as Valverde is now on the last climb of the day. The finishing line is just 1 kilometre after the last climb ends. So as we look at the eyes here of Alessandro Valverde, we're going to take a break, but when we come back we will be commercial free right up to the end of the stage. We'll see you in just a moment. Now under 10 kilometres to go, Vanna, here for Alessandro Valverde. 6 miles, that would take him no time at all, except he's uphill all the way, bar 1 kilometre to the line and 3 kilometres downhill the bridge from the Peyresourde to the Périgueux.
Yeah, I think make it, Phil, he's got about 2.5 kilometres to the top of this climb, and then after that he's got that descent for a couple of kilometres, and then it's uphill to the finish line, the finishing ski resort of Périgueux.
There's only 2 riders left able to make the pace with Liquigas Cannondale. One is Nibali, and this is the other one, Ivan Basso, himself a podium finisher a couple of times on the Tour de France, now trying to launch Vincenzo Nibali, but they're not doing enough to close down the gap to Valverde. They have been outwitted by a Spaniard who went on the attack very early on today. He's still got 2:17 now. Jürgen van den Broek is going. No, it's Van Aert who's going.
It's his teammate who's going to try and set it up, because this is the old 1-2 here this afternoon. He was in difficulty in the early part of this climb. He was sitting at the back end of the group. He's trying to do exactly the same as Movistar did earlier on. He's riding in front of this group, and he will hope that Jürgen van den Broek can respond behind.
Well, this is a tactic which frankly is getting a bit boring. It never works, but they send a teammate away, the team leader joins, and then they all get caught. That's the way it's been with Vincenzo Nibali. It also hasn't worked with the other riders as well that we've seen attack in the Pyrenees. But let's see, because you're right, Jelle van Aert was in real difficulty on the Porte d'Alès.
Well, I wonder if that tactic is going to work for the man we're looking at here, because that was the same tactic adopted by Movistar. This man, Alejandro Valverde, jumped away to join his own teammate, Rui Costa, worked with Costa for a while, and then when he found that his teammate was lacking in power, took off on his own.
And the result is 2 minutes and 2 minutes 26, they're saying, at the 10-kilometre banner. Here comes the peloton. Dan Martin still riding strongly just on the right of our picture here. The Sky rider, who is just on the back of the field here, is Michael Rogers. So he's not having such a good day today for Sky. He would normally be closer to Wiggins.
Well, 2 minutes was the gap for Van Aert, and 2:07, I would think, for the main field. So Van Aert not really going anywhere this afternoon. Sky don't need to respond to this, because they will respond if there's an attack from Jürgen van den Broek, but they're not too worried about Jelle van Aert here this afternoon.
The rider in the red jersey there is riding 8th in the line, is Cadel Evans. We haven't seen much of him today, Cadel, but I think he's riding very, very well, contrast to yesterday. And don't be surprised if on the next climb we don't see him try to move away from this group, just for a matter of showmanship.
Well, once you start to get to the last 1.5 kilometres, it gets very, very steep. And the acceleration going now is putting Mickey Rogers into the red zone, and he's going to have to just sit up now and survive the final few kilometres of today's stage.
So they're coming up to 9 kilometres from the summit. This is a final push here by Ivan Basso to try and put Vincenzo Nibali in with a chance. He's still got to make a run of nearly 2.5 minutes to bring back Valverde. Also being dropped here now at the moment is Rein Taaramäki.
I beg your pardon.
No, sorry, Janis Brakovic, sorry.
Well, this is Christopher Kern here trying to make a move to get himself back into the main field. Brakovic has popped, and there he's joined by Mickey Rogers.
Brakovic on the hitches at the back. Now, just looking up here at the front, you know, with these riders tracking like this, TJ Van Garderen is making up ground on them. So just a reminder that today's commercial free stage is brought to you by Nissan, a proud partner of Radio Shack Nissan Trek. That's right, it takes us up to the kilometre 137, and our computer is saying that we've only got 11.7 kilometres left for the day. Cadel Evans, well, I was wrong because it looks as though the pace has been lifted just a fraction, and Cadel Evans is now yo-yoing at the back of a very elite chase bunch here.
Well, he's struggling to stay in contact. He was knocked down yesterday by a parasite which hit him just 2 hours before the start of yesterday's stage. He battled to stay involved, he's battled to stay in the main field, but at the end of the day, if you have a bad day in the mountains, there's not very much at all you can do. But he wants to try and keep himself still in the top 10 in the overall standings.
14 riders, including Evans, left in this elite bunch. 2 riders are just ahead. Well, one's just ahead and one is very much ahead. Valverde here being chased by Van den Dert. Van den Dert himself, a stage win in the Tour de France last year. He won at the Plateau de Baille and also led the King of the Mountains for 5 days. So he's no stranger to the high mountains. But you know, look at that now. Valverde looking across to the left to see, can he see anything at all of the top of the Col de Peyresourde?
Yeah, well, Cadel Evans is looking at the back end of this leading group of protagonists in the Tour de France. Ivan Basso has done a sterling job for his man here, Vincenzo Nibali, this afternoon, Phil, as Evans is just battling to stay inside the top 10. Defending champion from last year, he's done well in the Tour this year until this final couple of days in the Pyrenees.
He's just holding the tail of that bunch. There's 13 riders in front of him here in this pack, and they're being led still by Ivan Basso with Nibali. Nibali has made no effort. He's hoping that Basso can close it down. Here comes the move that the bridge was formed for. As Van den Dert is up the road, it's Jürgen van den Broek who lifts the pace.
Well, right on his wheel there is Pierre Rolland, the Frenchman, who was dubbed the King of the Alps because of a stage victory, and so too is a reaction coming from the young Frenchman, 22-year-old Thibaut Pinot in the 3rd position there, but still it looks as if they're starting to pick it up with Nibali.
1:39 the gap when they started the move here. Van den Broek, Pierre Rolland. It's done. Ivan Basso, he's been broken by the acceleration. Dan Martin is the rider on the right there. This is Christoph Kern in the green, number 27. Little gap opened up and Nibali has been caught wanting.
Well, he has. He now knows that he's got to nail that down, but he's also going to nail Cadel Evans a little bit further down the overall classification tonight with this final acceleration from Jürgen van den Broek.
The last battle at the high mountains of the 2012 Tour de France. The yellow jersey of Wiggins is not in any way ruffled by these accelerations. He sits there and pedals. Last year's winner, Cadel Evans, is now losing ground and probably a top 10 finish in Paris. Well, Van den Dert has been joined by his team captain, but they're all back together.
Well, they're all back together, and watch out, look at that. Chris Horner, at 39 years of age, is in this group as well, Phil.
Chris Horner is doing the ride of his life, and he almost wasn't in the Radio Shack team at all, but there he is, still up there with the front runners. Andreas Kloden caught a little bit off the back there, but should get back. The pace may well drop again a little bit. There's the 2 Lotto Belisol riders now. Van den Dert on the front, the winner at the Plateau de Baille last year. And on the left, Jürgen van den Broek, followed by Pierre Rolland, the winner at La Toussuire.
I might have said that Chris Horner was 39. He's actually 40 years of age. Well, now we can see these riders really struggling at the back. That's Denis Menchov, number 131. Nicholas Roach in difficulty also.
Go back up to the leader now, receiving the polite applause of the crowd here. And we're getting into the mist line now. The Belgians are taking over at the front. Nibali, well, he's gone back to 4th place. All the work his team's done for him today, he's not made a move at all. As the Spanish flags are just over the border, and the British flags and the English flag all fly proudly on the Col de Peyresourde. An attack now, and this looks as though it might be Thibaut Pinot.
Thibaut Pinot, he's a great climber, 22 years of age from France, and he's being nailed back now by Jürgen van den Broek and Pierre Rolland. This kid is going to be a brilliant climber over the next couple of years. He's already won a stage in the Tour de France at his very first participation.
Yes, and he did it so well near his home, and this is the man that TJ Van Garderen must keep a reasonably close eye on. Pinot is 3 minutes and 48 behind him in the white jersey competition. Time is on the side of TJ Van Garderen, but he won't let him go too far. He's still in this group, TJ. In fact, you can see him in the white jersey there, just keeping an eye as he rides behind Bradley Wiggins, number 9.
Yeah, and number 9 there is the leader now. We're getting right up to the top with Alejandro Valverde. He's over the summit now of the Col de Peyrasourde on the descent. A chance for some respite for him before he lines up for the final 4 kilometers to the top of the Col de Peyrasourde. But those accelerations behind Phil, they keep eating into his advantage. Look at that, he only has a minute and 16 seconds lead.
It's going to be a desperately close finish, it really is. Now that normally would be the summit of the Col, but we're going on and we're adding on the little extra on the Peyrasourde itself. The peloton, because they're attacking each other here, are closing in. 76 seconds to this group now for the leader. Evans and Kern trying to get back on. And they've mastered Pinot, they've put him back in his place. Chris Froome having a chat with Bradley Wiggins. Everything under control and going well as time runs out for the rest of the riders in this year's Tour de France. And do you know, I'm wondering if Bradley Wiggins is saying to Chris Froome, go and win the stage, because it would look like that sort of a conversation. So there we are now, we're back with the leader of the day here, but he won't affect the final yellow jersey of this year's Tour de France, because Wiggins and Froome are just behind Thibaut Pinot at the head of a very selected group here.
And hats off to Chris Horner at 40 years of age, because he will see himself moving up a little bit in the overall standings tonight. Started the day in 13th place. I think he's already gone up to 12th, but if Nicholas Roach has a problem... Well,
I am wondering if Wiggins has said to Chris Froome, go and win the stage, because why not?
Well, that could be what's going on there. Froome is coming to the front, and he's, I don't think they're going to let him go. I think they're just going to set a tempo on the descent here.
You wait till you see the climb up to the line, and Froome opens up with the effort he's done in the Alps and earlier in the Pyrenees. The gaps, though, is still a minute 20. That's a lot of work to be done with only 3.8 kilometers to the line. As he starts to look for the summit. The summit comes 1 kilometer from the finish of today's stage.
Well, Froome is making the descent before they swing on to these final few kilometers up to the top of the finishing climb of Peyrasourde. Second position, Bradley Wiggins, as they go under 5 kilometers to go as well. And there is a sea of people.
These are all Spanish supporters here, and it's Valverde of Spain who leads the Tour to the summit. You just about can see the road to these people here. They've just come over the mountain to see a Spanish winner, and he had to be a Spanish winner, I think, today. And Valverde made the move very early on.
Well, Phil, he's got about 2 kilometers of climbing left till he gets to the flat last kilometer of the stage. Theoretically, the power that Alejandro Valverde has got, he should be able to survive. But now, all of a sudden, look at the face here on this man. They want to try and get a stage win if they can, but I'm not sure that they can bridge back a minute and 23 seconds on Valverde, because Valverde's not the kind of bike rider who's going to crack.
No, he isn't, and now Bradley Wiggins is using all the excess energy he kept in the reserve tank just in case he was attacked today. They didn't lift a pedal in anger. Bradley Wiggins had it all under control. Now is he's using all his spare effort to try and launch Chris Froome to the win. I don't think it's possible. A minute 24, they're saying, and it's only 3.2 kilometers to go. Valverde is in front of his own public.
That's the first time you've seen a grimace on the face of Bradley Wiggins since this tour started in Liège almost 2.5 weeks ago. And what he's trying to do is to set this up for a stage victory for his own teammate here. There again, there's a move from Jürgen van den Broek. They're putting themselves into a little bit of difficulty by trying to win the stage and trying to be a little bit too greedy.
3 kilometers to go here. And this is for Alejandro Valverde. The motorbikes are clearing the way for the Spanish rider.
Well, Phil, he's got, by my account, about 2 kilometers of climbing left to go, and then he flattens out. Chris Horner is in a spot of bother at the back, number 14. Just in front of him, it's TJ Van Garderen. In front of him, Vincenzo Nibali. This is all going to go down to the shouters. The Spanish fans, they want a victory this afternoon. From the United Kingdom on the front, ahead of Jürgen van den Broek. Next, it's Bradley Wiggins in the yellow jersey. and there's a nutter running alongside him.
He's not in the line, and it's also damaged TJ Van Garderen, and it's also damaged Vincenzo Nibali. He didn't have it in the end. There's a very select group of riders pulling away. This has turned into a bonus day in the Pyrenees for Bradley Wiggins and for Chris Froome, because they're pulling away for the third place rider in the Tour de France.
TJ Van Garderen in difficulty, needs to keep a close eye on the rider in the white jersey, Thibaut Pinot. He had a 3-minute advantage on him at the start of the day. I don't think he'll lose that on the running up towards the finish line this afternoon. But Chris Froome is stomping all over those pedals.
Paul, this is still possible. The clock is saying 57. I don't believe the clock. I think he's just up the road. Chris Froome knows it. He's looking at Wiggins, and I think Wiggins is saying just keep going, because they've got the whole Tour de France lying on their backs.
Well, they have. They're putting the final knife into the back of the opposition here this afternoon. Nibali now, Phil, is riding on pride. He wants to get across that gap. The big acceleration going from Chris Froome. Wiggins looks over his shoulder. He knows this is it.
The top two riders in the Tour de France are riding away. They've completely imploded the peloton. Now Froome is waiting again to let the yellow jersey onto his wheel. They want to ride to the top together, and he's saying, come to me, Brad, come to me.
Well, the Basque flags are still flying high, and the man who leads this race, of course, let's not forget Alejandro Valverde. He talks again to Bradley Wiggins here, and they start to get the organisation once more. They can probably not quite figure out where this man is, because there is a sea of people on this final climb of the day. Valverde looks around every corner. He's trying to figure out, can he survive this afternoon with the accelerations they're getting thrown at the race behind him.
Well, we talked of this day as the possible day that Wiggins could lose the Tour, and it's actually turning out to be the day he won the Tour, because as we come to the end of the Pyrenees, the top two men in the overall have got only one man they don't really care about in front of them. And if they can catch him, they'll beat him as well.
Well, that's what they're looking for, Phil. Race Radio is still saying it's 45 seconds. These two guys are shouting. I think they're encouraging each other to stomp their authority all over this final Pyrenean stage. 2 kilometers to go. Alejandro Valverde, Phil, is not far away from the final 1 kilometer of flat. He's got 42 seconds advantage. He's got to try and conserve it over the next 1 kilometer.
That's all, 1 kilometer. He tops out with the King of the Mountains. It's 1 kilometer, and Froome is going for it. I think he's been given it now, and Wiggins has said, just go. I'm still yellow. Go and get Alejandro Valverde. You've got 2 kilometers to nail him back.
Well, they're confused. They don't really know what to do. They do not know what to do. Froome is so strong in the mountains here this afternoon. He's decided once again to wait for Bradley Wiggins. It's all about what they've said from the start of the year, Phil. They want to win the Tour de France and not look for individual glory.
Well, there's no doubt that Froome could have won the Tour de France. There's no doubt either. He is a very, very loyal member of Team Sky, and he wants to see Bradley Wiggins be crowned on Sunday in Paris. He brings him back up to his side as he continues to push towards the summit.
Well, they're trying to clear the road in front of the yellow jersey and Chris Froome here this afternoon. TJ Van Garderen, number 9, briefly on the defensive, but he still leads the best young rider competition.
Well, it better be a big, big bottle of champagne for Chris Froome. These two riders, though, as 2 riders on Sky, have been the outstanding men of this year's Tour de France. This rider is the 3rd place finisher in Paris, and he's still struggling to maintain these 2 riders in sight. You can't hear Race Radio, but they are screaming at the crowd now to let the riders come up in clear road. This is a crucial stage. The gap is officially 33 seconds, and they are closing. He's going to win by the skin of his racing shorts, because we go downhill for the last kilometre.
But I'll tell you one thing, Phil. Chris Froome, I reckon, could have won this stage here this afternoon if he hadn't waited for his teammate and team leader, Bradley Wiggins. Nibali, though, in difficulty. He was the attacker yesterday. Today, he's on the ring. He's on the ropes in the ring.
As they clear their way up to the top of the Périgord climb, there'll be King of the Mountains points, which won't matter, but just over the top by a kilometre is the finishing line. This man is nearly there. The gap is 30 seconds. Froome could have crossed that gap.
I am sure that he could, but now Alejandro Valverde is into the flatter part of this course now. There's 1 kilometre to go, and from here, it's flat.
It's flat, and we even tip downhill 50, 100 metres before the finish, and Froome and Wiggins are being joined here by Thibaut Pinot. and he's in the battle for the white jersey with TJ Van Garderen, who is a little bit behind just now.
Well, Chris Froome is really turning himself inside out now. He will look for that banner that indicates 1 kilometre to go. It should not be a problem at all for Alejandro Valverde to survive here this afternoon. He's looking now to see the banner that will indicate 500 metres to go and the finishing banner above it.
As he comes in to the square now, he will see where he's headed to. It's been a magnificent breakaway. He went away on his own. He topped the Portobello on his own. He's maintained the descent. He maintained it up the Peyresourde and now the Périgord. He deserves the victory. There is no doubt about that. But Great Britain has never known a Tour de France like this in its 99-year history. Two British riders completely dominating the Tour de France in the Pyrenees.
Well, this is Vincenzo Nibali now, number 51. He's trying to keep himself in third place in the overall standings. He went out on the aggression yesterday, and today he's on the back foot.
In the distance are the two British riders dispatching the third place overall in the race and losing time. But now he's screaming across the lower summit of the Périgord. It will shortly go downhill now as he lines up for the finish. It's all a matter of zip up the jersey and salute the crowd. A win near Spain for a Spaniard. Now the race for second place, Chris Froome, familiar sight this as it all started back out on stage 7 in La Planche des Belles Filles. And now it is Chris Froome, and look at the clock counting. Froome could have crossed that gap and he could have won the day, but for the moment they stay 1 and 2 in the Tour de France, 18 seconds back.
Well, Thibaut Pinot crosses the line there in fourth position. Pierre Rolland comes in next with Jurgen van den Broek, but the first two riders in the overall standings have extended their lead over everybody else in this bike race. And this man had a bad day today, Vincenzo Nibali, but he was aggressive and his team sets it up for that incredible finale.
And here is TJ Van Garderen. He's in a battle for the white jersey. He's lost a little bit of time, but he hasn't lost enough to claim that white jersey. TJ Van Garderen will keep his white jersey, and in the time trial he might have a bigger advantage. He lost about 32 seconds.
Yeah, but I think he'll move up into fifth place overall. Look at this ride by the 40-year-old Chris Horner.
Brilliant ride by Chris Horner. 40 years of age, was almost left out of the Tour de France. He's proving to be the best rider for Radio Shack. And a great ride by Ireland's Dan Martin as well. And that is Andreas Kleuden, who comes over the line. He's been a podium in the past, and now we'll have to wait a little bit.
Well, here's the cousin of Dan Martin coming up, the former Irish national champion Nicholas Roach, and he will keep himself up in the top places overall. And with the crumbling of Jani Brajkovic this afternoon, Nicholas Roach might just nip into the top 10.
Well, that's his ambition, and it may be today he has done it. There's only the time trial now, which will upset the overall situation. And the time trial, of course, is when Wiggins is racing in his own backyard. There's Richie Porte, his arm bandaged from the crash in the feeding station. This is the next group on the road with Michael Rogers in it. No sign of Cadel Evans there.
Yeah, Cadel Evans was in that group with Jani Brajkovic.
Here he is coming in now. And it's Brajkovic, Evans and Michael Rogers. Yeah, he was tucked in there. And Christoph Kern. These are the four riders sprinting out goodness knows what position, losing just over 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, big time gaps. A dramatic day. The overall contenders wanted to have a showdown here this afternoon, and it was because of Nibali's Liquigas team that it almost came back together. But Alejandro Valverde, Phil, he got the victory that he's been looking for.
He most fought back, he's recovered, he was tired, he's fought back in the Pyrenees. Jurgen van den Broek in 6th place. I think he should have been better personally. Chris Horner a brilliant 9th, 1 minute and 2 seconds off the pace. Dan Martin completing the top 10.
Yeah, but in the overall standings, Bradley Wiggins remains the same time over Chris Froome, but now Nibali's down to 2 minutes and 41 seconds back.
And as we look down now, the clock continues to count. It's over 3 minutes since the Valverde crossed the line, and Radio Shack, well, they've got plenty of men up and over, so they'll keep their extended lead in the team competition.
Well, that was Maxime Montfort and Jaime Zubeldia, who started the day in 5th place overall.
overall standings. There are no immediate changes, but there are time differences now. Froome holds in at 2:05. Nibali loses a little bit, goes back to 2:41. Jurgen van den Broek loses to 5:53, and TJ Van Garderen comes up into 5th place now, the young American. Amazing result, but he's over 8 minutes behind the race leader. Cadel Evans still in 6th place. In fact, he's come up a little bit today. Highmore Zubeldia lost or held on to 7th, just 10:01. Pierre Roland 8th. Brakovic down to 9th, and Thibaut Pinot completing the top 10, but at 11 minutes and 46 seconds.